7:03. Thank you for giving us a little leeway on our start time. At this time, we're going to take a report of actions in closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Closed session 1, conference with labor negotiator. Council was updated and gave negotiating authority to the negotiators, but there was no reportable action. Item 2, real property negotiation was not discussed, it's taken off calendar. Item 3, council discussed 2 potential cases, no reportable action. Item 4, real property negotiation was not discussed, was continued to the end of the meeting. Item 5, existing litigation, council was updated and there was no reportable action.
All right, thank you very much. So we will have the Pledge of Allegiance with Councilmember Alleman, and then we'll have our invocation with Pastor Michelle.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll remain standing for the invocation, please.
Hello. Goodness. Psalm 37 tells us to trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as the noonday. And it continues to say, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Lord, we come to you first tonight. We invite you to be present here in this room. Thank you for this city council, for Mayor Grundmeyer, for Mayor Pro Tem Bash, and for council members Alleman, Hanna, and Newton. Thank you for all that they do. Lord, thank you for all that are working here tonight and who are gathered here this evening. Holy Spirit, we ask you to fill each one with wisdom, understanding, discernment, and knowledge. Grant them favor, increase their faith, and encourage them to pursue excellence in all they say and do. Bless this meeting with meaningful discussions and clarity and purpose. Lord, together we seek to build community and to bring honor to you. We lift this meeting up to you. Stay in our midst. God bless Horsetown, USA, and God bless the United States of America. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Pastor Michelle, for joining us this evening. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and move into presentations. So we have Councilmember Alleman, who is going to present our City Spirit Award.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we are very excited to honor Victoria Leonard with Norco's Community Spirit Award. Victoria has been a longtime Norco resident and business owner. She purchased Business Express in 2002, sponsoring both Little League and basketball for our community's youth after opening her first store in town. Since 2008, she has owned Everything Boutique on 6th Street and has been a constant supporter of local events such as the Norco Fair. Her business has held several food and other essentials drives for the Senior Center and worked to gather needed items for Moore, Oklahoma after a devastating tornado hit. Her business has sponsored numerous Ms. Norco Rodeo Girls and constantly donates prizes to our local animal fundraisers, the Norco Equestrian Hall of Fame, and supports in any way she can whenever asked. At Everything Boutique, veterans and first responders receive free notary services and a discount on merchandise. They help customers with free packing materials and local vendors by including them in their annual holiday party. Her business has also supported Norco High basketball, lacrosse, and the performing arts. Victoria served for 8 years on EDAC, and she will now be serving on the city's Measure R committee. For all of these reasons, we find that Victoria Leonard embodies the community spirit of Norco, and we gladly recognize her for her efforts tonight. So I'm going to present to her her certificate and a pin. It says, Victoria Leonard, the Norco City Council applauds you for embodying the spirit of Norco.
just want to say it's an honor to have a business here in town and to serve each and every one of you whenever you come into our shop. We love you so much, and thank you for this.
All right, we have another recognition this evening, so I'm going to call upon our finance director, Lizette Free, to make the presentation.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and council members. The Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement of Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Norco for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. I'd just like to give a special thanks. So for the last 20 consecutive years, the City of Norco has received this award. This is a significant award not only for the city, but especially for our finance department. Our department works tirelessly each year to ensure that we meet all the requirements and fiscal accountability. I especially like to thank our team, especially Daphne Liu. She was an integral part in implementing the new GASB accounting standard, which was huge this year for our GASB 87 leases. There are many cities that actually contracted out to implement that. However, Daphne took it upon herself and implemented the standard. I would also like to thank the City Council for your continued trust and guidance. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lizette, very much. You and your team always do amazing work, and 20 years consecutively speaks very highly to our city and the work that the finance department does. So thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go to item number 1, which is our city council reports on regional boards. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Bash.
I don't have anything to report, but Lisette, LAA, Life After Andy. So congratulations, you guys have kept up the tradition. And I also wanted to congratulate the mayor on a wonderful event on Sunday, the opening of the barn. There's been a couple of things we've done in the city of Norco in which it turned out better than I thought it was going to turn out. One was the memorial and the other one was the barn. It is amazing. That was your vision that drove that. I know we all voted, but it was your vision that drove that, and I really appreciate it. It's outstanding. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Alleman.
On August 17th, I attended the Northwest Mosquito and Vector Control Board of Trustees meeting. And I just wanted to let people know that they have social media on Instagram, and they post whenever they are going to be spraying. They did spray recently in Norco because we have had an increase in West Nile. So please make sure that there's no standing water on your property. Use bug spray. And they have all those guidelines up there. So if you're not following them, you can follow them and you can find out anytime they're respraying and the areas. But they did increase spraying for those residents who are interested to hear what they are doing about that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hannah.
First of all, I want to congratulate Lizette and her crew for the award. That I told Robin this the other day that I was really happy for her and Carol and Joel for getting this new barn to have their shows in and everything. All the hard times that everybody's went through with those pole barns up there, and at least this time they had something to work with and looks good for the future. But our RTA updates, we were dark in part of August and part of July, no meetings, but ridership has come up 35%. That's a big increase since the end of COVID. And the 25-cent promotion that they've been running from June the 1st to August the 30th has ended. But now the free Friday rides will be offered from September the 1st through June the 28th of 2024. So the free rides are available on all fixed routes on Fridays, Commuter Link, and the Go Micro buses. RTA Board of Directors, we've run into a snag on employees like a lot of other companies. We're short about 18 drivers, coach operators, they call them. So the service changes on the weekend routes are up there. The Route 1, 11, 13, 14, 16, 19, 22, 27, and 28 will begin September the 10th. There's going to be a change in how often the buses come by. And today at the board meeting, we found out that through their recruitment process, they've got 5 new coach operators prospects signed up, so they'll start their training this weekend. I believe they have to train for 6 weeks before they can turn them loose by themselves in one of those big rigs. And with RCTC, this is kind of a confusing deal, and I'll get it explained better next Wednesday when I go to the big board meeting and read more of the agenda. But they're going to try out a smart freeway system to try to improve the movement of traffic. They're going to start with the 4 on-ramps at northbound 15 and Temecula. And it's too complicated to try to explain it. We only had a short video, but we're going to have a long one next week. And I guess I hadn't been down to 15 in a long time during rush hour, but I guess it's really a mess, morning and night, and everything. But that's all I have right now.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Newton.
Good evening. Let's see, we had our Riverside Transmission Reliability Project Subcommittee and working group meetings August 8th and also today. We met again. That's Councilmember Bash, myself, and our city manager. And then the MSW/RFP, I've changed the name of our subcommittee meeting. It was called the Manure Committee. And so I changed it to the Mixed Solid Waste Request for Proposal Subcommittee. And the mayor and myself, along with city manager and director of public works and our consultant, went through the proposal that, if all of you don't know, that we would be going out to bid on our waste management contract, and that should be in the next couple of weeks, I believe. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have nothing to report at this time, so we will go to item number 2, which is our consent. So I'm going to ask if any council members have any items that they would like to be pulled.
2D, 2L.
Okay. So 2D is in dog and 2L is in lion. Any other items? So 2M is in Mary. Okay. Any others? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Any cards? That's my fault. No cards. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Alleman, I'm sorry. So is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, thank you.
Please vote. Robin, you stick.
Voted yes.
And motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 3, which is going to be those items that were pulled from consent. We're going to go ahead and start with item 2D. Councilmember Newton.
Thank you, Mayor. I pulled this item for a couple of reasons. One that I'm concerned where the economy is going at this time, and the direction, the overall direction I thought from council was that we were going to be just hiring like 2 public works employees over this last term, and then just be a little more aware of where we're going in the future with either full-time or part-time employees. Couple of concerns that I have is that workload is slowed down at this time as far as with development, building, and items coming to planning, and that maybe we just pause this for a while and see what happens mid-year, and see if there's improvements with the economy. I did have a question for Lisette on the overall cost on this part-time was approximately $32,000 in the staff report. And I went back into our 2023 budget, and we did allocate $20,000 for a part-time employee.
Yeah, so when we estimated the budget back in April when we started, the estimate was at a rate of $20 for a part-timer for, 1,000 hours. Bringing this up now, when they did the cost study of what is a planning aid going out there, the range was 24 to 30, I believe.
30, 40.
Yes, and it was my oversight that, when I was reviewing the staff report, I didn't cross-reference the rate.
Oh, that was self-explanatory to me. So, okay, so we would be light in the budget regardless.
Yes,
And-
it usually, we're already a quarter almost done, so budget-wise, I don't think if we do hire someone, for starting in October, that it would exceed the 22,000
Okay.
based on a quarter passing already.
It just, like I mentioned earlier, my concern is that I think we need to, be pulling in the reins a little bit where we can. And that I think at this time, I just don't see the need for additional help in the planning department. Obviously, I have an idea. Obviously, we always need part-time help in parks and rec and building and different departments. Is it possible to get a list of all our part-time employees with like what departments they're working under or reporting to?
We could get that to you.
Okay. Because I mean, I know that obviously we use them in facilities and at Angles Park and Parks and Rec, and it's just kind of interested to the magnitude for each department on that. Is that okay, Mayor?
Yes.
And then those being my concerns, so thank you, Lisette. And then overall on this, that I don't think we can vote on this item regardless, because both resolutions, where it says approve the position title and salary range for a part-time planning aide, now references, therefore it be resolved that we approve the part-time salary schedule that includes the position title and salary range for a part-time code enforcement supervisor, attachment A, and there was also no attachment A in the report. Thank you,
Agree.
Mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I have in my notes. So I'm glad that Councilmember Newton pulled them. The first resolution is not numbered and incorrect. The second resolution is numbered and also incorrect, and there is no attachment A. So for that reason, I am, and additionally, what Councilmember Newton talked about, where we've been told we had the 2 positions that we were going to hire, and then everything else was on a freeze. So that this action does not match what we said. So that's my discussion. Any discussion from either of you? Councilmember Hannah, anything? Okay, so I will entertain a motion. Or if you want, I can make, yeah. Or do we just, Mr. Attorney, if we just don't do anything, it dies. Is that correct? If there's no motion, no anything? Okay, so are we all good with no action? Okay, perfect. So moving on to item 2L, I believe. Councilmember Newton this week.
Thank you, Mayor. You ready, Chad? So on our consent calendar, that we had 3 different items for purchase of vehicles. The first 2 earlier, I certainly understand that. So I have a couple of questions on this item, and this is for the 2024 Ford F-350 service truck. And going through the staff report on this, this is to replace a 2013 Ford F-150, and which was previously scheduled to be replaced during fiscal year 2018-2019. Which means we're only tentatively, we're only going to keep this for 5 years. If it was a 2013 and we were going to replace it in 2018.
Correct. That was the original schedule that they had on our internal spreadsheet to replace in 5 years, which at the time we said that's not reasonable. So I extended it out to now it's 10 years because the original time to get the payback was 5. To
Well,
basically
okay.
our payments. So we said, look, that's not reasonable. That's why I moved it. That's why it's 10 years now instead of the original 18, 19.
Well, how can we change, is this a policy, or how can we change it that I would make the assumption the majority of the people in this room don't buy a new vehicle every 5 years? That,
And I can explain that. So we've worked the last 2 years to revamp our internal spreadsheet that we have that talks about when we, and folks know, and the council knows, we pay basically a lease payment or a rental payment for our equipment that goes back to our fund. But when we need to replace it, there's money there appropriately to cover that. We've gone through and the last couple of years revamped our spreadsheets to get rid of equipment that really doesn't exist or sell it off, and change the dates of when we get a new equipment or existing, and when it's intended to an expiration date, when we want to have the money in the account by the time we need to replace it. So a lot of the stuff we've revised to either 10 years on trucks or maybe 7 years on certain equipment that gets really beat up a lot, like our Vector trailers or something. It's not going to last more than 7 years. It needs to be replaced. So we've done a lot of work to try to refine that. But I did want to, like I said, the information was in our spreadsheet. That was the original date of its intended, but we recognize that's not realistic. I'm looking at that information from my predecessors. It's like, here's the actual time frame that should last. It's mileage, it's usage, number of hours on the engine. There's a lot of factors we go on that, but we try to at least set the date on there now to either be like a 7 or 10 year window to at least have the money in there. We may push the vehicle much farther than that. So at least we know we've reached enough money to theoretically replace it at the time we want to, but we may extend that usage of that vehicle even longer and push that window. So I do apologize for that, but what it represents, I did want to indicate what it originally was planned. I didn't agree with it. We changed it, and that's why it's gone this long. We've gone to 23 now instead. But that's what occurred. We have revised that whole process now to where we've got a lot cleaner process and an expectation of how long our equipment should last by the theoretical replacement date. But in most cases, it goes a lot longer.
so with that said, And I'm just going to take it as like a set aside. Every year you're going to set aside X amount of dollars. And like with this, it would have been accelerated over a 5-year period. But $131,000 for this F-150, out of the $131,000, how much has been set aside?
The full amount,
The full amount?
yes. We're not asking for any more with this item.
Okay,
Same thing with the earlier item, which is the 150 that we're looking to do.
right.
And the other item as far as the 650, that was part of the budget where we allocated 125,000. And then we had funds in the existing that were already previously allocated for a different item that I actually eliminated, which was a generator. We didn't need to purchase that generator, so there's funds there, and I used those 2 funds to purchase the truck.
Okay, so
But to ask for more.
it sounds like then you're putting off, like purchasing, like say the generator or a trailer or whatever. You're going to put off that purchase to fund this purpose.
No, we determined we didn't need it anymore. We don't need that generator.
Are there any other pieces of equipment that we put off or delay to help backfill this set aside?
No, we actually took savings that were unused from other purchases that we did in the past that had been reallocated to other equipment. So we took some of
Okay.
the savings from other past years' equipment purchases, moved that to those items, and then basically backfilled those areas. We were okay.
That's all the questions I have, Chad. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions of staff on this
I
item?
want to make a statement here.
Okay,
Today at RTA subcommittee meeting, we voted to purchase 7 new Ford pickups. It'll have to go before the big board in 2 weeks, but they went through the same thing that you and I was talking about yesterday, finding a place to get them. You know, like you went to Baker or Fresno to get 2 of these. And is it because these local dealers don't want to accommodate the people on heavy duty trucks anymore? I remember the last time when Terry was here, he had to go out of town to get a heavy duty truck because the local dealer wouldn't come with one of them. And that's what they run into at RTA this week was.
I can't speak for their motivations, but we've had a lot of difficulty getting the local dealers to want to participate, including the one that we did get with the local dealer. We actually had to hand deliver that to the dealer and then repeatedly ask for the quotes for 2 months to get that. You know, so it's a struggle for some reason. I don't know why, but we do make an effort to try to work with local dealers. It's not been good over the last several years.
Right, and I can see them selling that little 150 compared to these other big trucks, but I just letting you know that RTA's had the same problem this week or this month trying to locate 7 large trucks and everything. That's all I have, Mayor.
all right, thank you. Any other discussion or comment? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Please vote. Motion passes with Councilmember Newton voting no.
All right, very good. We'll go on to the next item that was pulled from our consent calendar, item 2M, and that will be Mayor Pro Tem Bash.
I guess. Lori, do you want to just do a report on this, or who's in charge of this one? Yeah, you are. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about this, and then I want to add some comments.
Sure. This item is an amendment to the professional services agreement for Cal Strategies for project management services related to the RTRP undergrounding. So we have been working, as the council knows, with along on a parallel track with City of Riverside to work on how we can forward the undergrounding of the entire Riverside Transmission Reliability Project. So as part of that, the council retained in March a consultant, Steve Larson from Cal Strategies, to manage this project for us. So he's been doing that. That agreement is set to expire on the 15th of this month. And we are in the thick of preparing our petition for reconsideration to the California Public Utilities Commission. So we need to keep Steve on for a few more months, at least to help manage this over the finish line. We discussed this with the subcommittee, and the subcommittee recommended approval also. So for 3 more months, we would have Cal Strategies, and it's not just Steve, it's actually Cal Strategies, the firm, their services to help us finish that petition process and gathering the support and wrangling, just managing the project for us. So that's what we're doing. So we hope to have that done very quickly and have that in front of the Public Utilities Commission.
So what this is about, there's some of us have been involved in this for a decade. And what it is that it's the high transmission lines that they want to run from Urupa Valley. By the way, in 2 weeks, Urupa Valley will be voting to approve the residential project. And at that time, Edison will begin in early next year to actually do the Urupa Valley side. So we're in the middle of a huge battle. I mean, this is a true David and Goliath. And what they want to do is run high transmission lines across the river, through Norco, through private properties, through the Hidden Valley Nature Preserve, through a low-income area in La Sierra, and into Riverside. We managed to get Riverside to agree to give us some time to underground this project. We're not trying to stop it. And we want to go before the CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities folks, to get them to authorize to underground it. The problem we're running into is we have a lot of support in some areas and not so much support in other areas. Greg and I are on that committee. This council's been united in trying to fight this, as was the previous council. But quite honestly, Edison isn't quite playing fair. I'm not going to get into too much of that, but one of the things at issue, which is important to everybody who lives in Norco, is that when you put up high transmission lines, you can't drop water via helicopters and planes. Now, that is what saved us in the last 2 major fires we had. Second thing that saved us was we didn't have a wind event. This is the Riverside Reliability Project. Well, right now, what's happening is that the bigger businesses are being told you won't have power to run your companies in Riverside. There's a lot of things like that, but it's a reliability project. When there is a high wind event or an earthquake or something catastrophic, they shut off the power. And so we're trying to get them to underground this, and we're trying to get the facts out. But one of the things that really needs to happen is the residents of Norco, and just today, the representative from Congressman Takano said this, they like to hear from elected officials, but they really like to hear from the folks, residents. And so if you're interested, we've put out a letter, and you can get information from any one of the council people. We need letters written to Senator Roth. We need letters written to Congressman Calvert, Congressman Takano. Both of them are in our corner. Senator Roth, he's in our corner, kind of. Serena Cervantes has been very supportive, although today she said she would not be signing a letter. So I have to find out if that is in truth the case. We do have great support from the majority of the Riverside City Council, Bill Asaley and Kelly Swarto. But it would really help if even for all those people to let them know that you want this undergrounded. And just to put pressure, as much pressure as we can, to let them know that the people are saying we don't want it. One of the myths that's out there is that some of the elected officials, and it's part of the reason why local control is so important. I run into people in the supermarket. I really know what's happening. Above our level, they don't know. They don't realize how unpopular this project is. They also don't realize that when the first lines went up in Chino Valley, the residents went crazy because they hadn't heard about it. Not a single elected official was left standing. If those lines go up next year, there are people who want to be supervisor, they will not get elected. And so I think that they just need to know that the people don't want this to happen. And one of the other things that's very interesting, it's going to go through a disadvantaged neighborhood. And it's very important that they also, even though it's not our city, that they're protected, because a lot of times people don't, they're afraid to speak up. And so we maybe have to speak for them. Norco has a tradition of fighting the big fight, even though we're small. We really do the impossible in the city. When you look around and you realize, I mean, I can remember when Chino, Eastvale, Urupa Valley, Temescal Valley was all rural. I remember when they were riding horses, there were cows, there were chickens. The only person, the only city rather left standing is Norco, and it's because we take on fights like this. But we cannot do it by ourselves. Our city manager is working her took us off. I mean, staff is working hard, but we need residents to let them know how you feel. And so I'm putting it out there that just say, look, I want this underground. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be rude, you don't have to be smart alecky, just say, look, I want this undergrounded. Please give Norco the time to find the money, give Riverside the time to find the money. Let us try to play out our petition to the CPUC. So that's all I have to say, Madam Mayor, and need your help. Thank you. And with that, I make, do we have
Other
cards?
comments or anything?
Then I make a motion to approve.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, which is our public comment. So I will call on the clerk.
This is the time when persons wishing to address the presiding governmental body regarding matters not on the agenda may be heard. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. The governmental body shall not discuss or act relative to any general public comment. Our first speaker is Bonnie Slager.
Good evening. As you all know, because I think you're all there, the last 2 weekends, we've had kind of busy weekends, events. And I've mentioned this before, but I mentioned it again, bleachers. You know, these groups have to rent bleachers. Horse Week, I know because I write the checks for Horse Week as the treasurer. Horse Week spent $31,000 on renting bleachers. Per John, the fair also spent $31,000 renting bleachers, and I imagine that the Posse Rodeo spent about the same. That's $90,000+ that we spent on renting bleachers. And if we had not had to spend that money on renting bleachers, we would have had more money to do things like give to the various nonprofit organizations, to help the city in various ways, to help various groups, to give scholarships, to help seniors, and all of that, the things that we try to do. So if you'll recall back that a year ago, the city helped with the rental of bleachers because you wanted to find the best configuration to purchase bleachers and to have more permanent bleachers up there. And that seems to have been forgotten in the last year. And so I'm just reminding you again, we want bleachers. I understand we'll probably still have to rent some, but there could be more permanent bleachers up there. I hope you will get that back on your agenda now. And also, since we had Sellout Crowds Plus, we need to really think of some way to allow for a bigger audience. I don't know how we're going to do it, stack them higher or something, but we really need to think about having bleachers so that we can have larger audiences there. The last 2 weekends, we did have to give money back to people because they could not find a seat. I think the same thing, all three events had to give money back to people that came and complained because they could not find a seat after looking for a half hour or more. So, thank you.
Our next speaker is Sam Albrecht.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sam Albrecht. I'm with the Corona Norco Family YMCA. So I wanted to introduce myself and kind of reintroduce the YMCA to you guys. I'm sure you're aware that we exist, but we're doing a lot of new things. So I wanted to make sure to point some of those out. But we've been in the community, Corona and Norco, since 1974, so we're coming up on our 50th anniversary next year. We've been primarily a child care provider to the community, and since 1974, we've served thousands of families from the community. More recently, we've started adding new programming, such as our swim. We have swim lessons, we have lap swim, we have aqua fitness available for all ages. We have youth sports, music, and then we've started to introduce healthy living as a big part of our program. Our board and our CEO have made healthy living a focus of our strategic plan going forward. So we're looking at ways to offer healthy living education and programming for our communities, including Norco. An example of that is our brand new diabetes prevention program that will be starting in November. It's going to be open to anyone. It'll be free of charge, and it's a way for folks to have a support group so they can manage their pre-diabetes. And we ideally, hopefully, will avoid diabetes. Coming up in the near future, we do our swim program year-round. It is an outdoor pool, so I hear that there was some spraying going on for mosquitoes. So I hope that doesn't encourage mosquitoes down towards our outdoor pool. But we do offer that year-round. Swim lessons, lap swim, as well as the fitness program in there. We have a new fitness facility will be opening up next week. So that's part of our healthy living. And then we're going to be doing a flick and float on September 15th, where we'll show a movie at that outdoor pool. So we'll make sure we have some bug spray available to avoid those mosquitoes. We also have basketball starting up soon. Soccer comes in October. Our new music program just started this week. And then in a couple weeks, we're very fortunate. We have a meeting with Michelle Anglin from Community Services. So we're looking forward to that to see how we can partner with Norco. I would like to invite you guys, and this is the real reason I'm kind of here, invite you guys to come down and take a tour of our facilities. Our main facility is just past 2nd Street there on River Road. The pool is just up the street from there, so come on by and see what we've got. Would also like to invite you to come to the Flick and Float, and we'll be watching Encanto on the deck of the pool while the kids get to play in the pool while the movie's playing. And then finally, come on down and play some basketball. We just installed a brand new basketball court. So we'd love for you guys to come down and visit with us. And we really look forward to ways to partner with Norco on how we can become a bigger part of the community here in Norco. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Tammy Norman.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm coming here tonight to express my thanks. I am involved with several organizations within this town. However, tonight I'm reporting and commenting as a private citizen. I've had the pleasure of working with city staff on 2 events, and there are actually 3 events. And I can't say enough about how, if I have a problem with the area I'm working in, they step up, they handle it, they take pride in what they're doing. Roger, for example, last weekend with the PRCA rodeo, the water truck broke and the rental did not spray water in a manner that he was happy with, and was not able to grade the arena properly for the barrel raisers. Amanda, thank you for the gift bags for them. They appreciated it. But anybody I work with on city staff, all I have to do is pick up a phone call and say, hey, I need help. And they help me and get what I need to help. So city, you should be proud, because I've worked with another city and they weren't as accommodating. So thank you.
I have no further speaker cards, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. So we are going to go on to item number 5, which is our legislative matters. So we'll start with item 5A, which is our second reading of ordinance 1099. Council, are there any questions or concerns with this item? All right, Are there any public comments on this item, Dana?
I have no public comments on this item, Mayor.
All right, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion. Second.
Under discussion. Colin, do we have to approve for the second reading these ordinances separately or all together? How do you want it?
We can put them all together. Okay.
Please vote. And motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
So item 6 is our discussion and action items. We have 6A, review the draft accessory dwelling unit legalization program. And so that's going to be our Community Development Director, Robles.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Let me. So if we can get the presentation on the. So again, good evening. This agenda item 6A is basically review of the draft ADU legalization program. As the council may recall that on June 21st, the City Council reviewed a draft of what was being proposed as far as ADU legalization program. The recommendations that were brought before council included incentives such as anonymous confidential pre-consultations, professional guidance, and legalization code enforcement delays and financial incentives. The City Council agreed that staff should move forward with the program, but that the program come back for final review by the City Council and the Planning Commission. So what is before you and what has been included in your packet is basically a handout of what will be provided to citizens of the community should they choose to move forward with legalizing the ADU. So what's been presented has been reviewed by our Planning Commission and is now being presented to Council for input. So pathway to legalization for ADU, we'll start with completing a self-assessment checklist, which has been included in your packet. And basically, it's just for homeowners to see if they can be eligible for bringing their unit into compliance. And this is intended to be confidential. They just have to do a self-assessment. They don't have to involve staff with this. And this is for their own personal knowledge. So the next step is eligibility conversation with our building staff. And again, this is intended to be confidential. Where there is, they can ask that our building official do kind of a virtual inspection to remain confidential. Again, for them to be able to see, okay, can I do this? Am I am I gonna have to tear something down? So we want to make sure that our residents are fully aware of what would be expected at this point. So what would be, as far as the eligibility conversation, the cutoff would be prior to ADUs that were converted prior to January 1st, 2018. In this case, what we would be looking for is for not necessary for compliance with current building code standards, but to address health and safety issues. So that would be what we would be discussing with the property owner at that time. So that would be followed by an initial inspection. This can be done by either our building official, or they can hire their own professional inspector to see what it would take to move forward. At this point, if our building official does go out there, it's no longer confidential, so they would have to follow through with the process. And then it would lead into them hiring a professional to draw up plans, permit issuance, and then final inspection for the ADU to be permitted, and that we get credit for housing protection. As far as the thing that's missing right now and what we need direction from our City Council is the fee incentives. What staff is recommending that as far as an incentive, that should the homeowner move forward with an inspection from our building official, that inspection fee be waived. The cost is $265, and our recommendation is that if the homeowner wants our building official to go out, that fee would be waived. So that's one incentive. Another incentive is when we get down to building permit issuance, there are fees that need to be collected. For ADUs that are under 750 square feet, the cost is a lot lower because those units don't require payment of development impact fees. So staff is recommending that those fees that are city fees, not pass-through fees like MISHIP fees, state fees, that the city could consider waiving those fees. So we're looking at a savings at about roughly $3,000 to $4,000, should that be the case. And I did provide in your staff report kind of a sheet that would point out the savings. And for those ADUs that are 750 square feet or more, staff recommendation is that an incentive waiver of fees be in the form of 50% of the development impact fees. So in your staff report, we provided an example. Let's say for a 12,000 square foot ADU, the impact fees are roughly about $14,000. So 50% of that would be a savings of $7,000. So those are a staff's recommendation on what could potentially be fee incentives to have people come forward and legalize their ADU. And one more thing, for those, what staff is also recommending, and I didn't put it on here, but what staff is recommending is that we incorporate into the program people that want to a higher incentive, say $10,000 to $25,000, to for homeowners that would like to put a affordability covenant on their ADU. And with that, funds can be used from our housing low mod homes, funds, to promote this kind of affordability with more incentives. So those are staff's recommendations for incentives. Again, we laid out what the program will consist of. They proposed a fee waiver recommendations. And based on the direction that we receive, we will come back forward with a resolution so we can get this going. So with that, I will conclude and answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director, for the report. So we'll move to council questions of staff. I'll start over here. Councilmember Hannah, questions?
Yeah, Alma, do we still have quite a few of those in the city that are not permitted?
Yes.
Okay, what about, do you consider the ones that are built above the barns as an ADU, or is that just an illegal dwelling?
Well, for the most part, yes, if they were constructed without permits, yes, they're non-permitted. However, they would be eligible to go through this program to bring the unit into compliance.
So they could do the same thing then?
They can, go through the program to bring it into compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Newton, any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple. Good report, Alma.
Thank you.
I want to thank you and staff and Planning Commission for all the work that you put into this, because I know it's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
Just some little cleanup questions
Sure.
in your report. On page 464.
Mhm.
Like the second paragraph, you're talking about initial inspection.
Yes.
And then where it states fix violations to any basic health safety codes as soon as reasonably possible.
Mhm.
What is reasonably possible?
Reasonably possible. Well,
I
it
mean,
depends.
time frame wise, because we know how.
Well, here's the thing.
drag out.
It would be, until we see the violation, it would be hard to give you a time frame, because if it is something that is detrimental to the for people to be living there, I mean, technically we could red tag the building, so it would take it would take a longer time frame. Reasonably, as soon as possible, but again, it depends on the violation that would dictate the time frame.
And this would be in our building official's judgment.
Of course, yes.
All right. And then hiring professionals, it was just a little tweak. It was where it goes on, homeowner will need to hire a draftsman. I put like architect or drafts
Sure.
person.
Mhm.
Building plans, would you also include site plans in that?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
part of the submittal packet.
All right. And then where it says contractor, could we please add the word licensed?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know why I would think that, but, and then the way I read this in the middle page, the same page, it just talks about final inspection. Would there be or not be progress inspections depending on the
Oh, yeah.
scope of the work?
Yes, depending on the scope. Of course, yes, it depends on the scope. So along the way, there's required inspections and they would be required to comply.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then in part of this checklist, and maybe I've missed it, that we want to promote that as many as these we can get legalized, obviously.
Yes.
And I think it's going to be a tough road to do it. I really do. But, and I don't know if it detracts, but I wouldn't want it to come as a surprise. But once, even with reduced fees, once we issue that permit, right, that the homeowner's property tax will be property be completely reassessed, or is it reassessed just for the improvement?
It's typically the improvement. So like when you add a pool,
Right.
the additional value of that pool is added. So it's typically the construction value of that addition to your property.
Okay. So we don't think they'll reassess the entire.
Yeah, and we're not the assessor, so I
Right.
can't speak for the assessor, but generally that is how the Board of Equalization instructs the assessor's
Okay.
offices.
And a caveat could be put into to the frequently asked questions. Is probably check with check with the county to see, if there's the potential. What would cause the property to be reassessed? So we can simply put the
But
caveat
just,
in there.
yeah, just a heads up.
Yeah,
you-
that's it.
Property
Mhm.
tax assessment and also your home insurance
Mm-hmm.
also.
Yeah, and the questions, the frequently asked questions, that could be just a question, would this
Okay.
go, we would just refer them over to the assessors, so.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
And then on page 467, just a question on self-assessment checklist. On interior room conversion, does that, if it was just that, does that count towards our RENA numbers?
Well, if it's an interior room conversion within the confines of the existing house, there is what it called a junior ADU.
Right.
So my understanding is that still counts as a unit.
Okay.
I will have to verify that though.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make
Mhm.
sure. So,
Yeah, and this
Okay.
program would that the junior ADUs would also be they could also come through this program as well.
good.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Alma.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Councilmember Alman, any questions?
Yes, I have a couple. On the FAQs, Alma, on number 5,
Yes.
the last sentence, the fire department may also require sprinklers if the existing house is increased for the ADU. Is that the existing house's square footage for like a JADU? They're talking about the size of an ADU.
Yes, the size of the ADU.
So when it says the existing house is increased, is it talking about a square footage threshold for the ADU?
Yes, for example, if a house has let's say it's 15,000 square feet and it goes with the ADU goes into the threshold of requiring fire sprinklers, then yes, it'll probably more than likely require fire sprinklers.
For the house? Sorry, I'm just confused. Are we talking about an ADU that's attached to the house? It's just not reading clearly for me. Or an ADU that's separate that gets added in with the square footage of the house?
Let's see, for an ADU that's added to, and this is something that I would have to clarify with our fire department, make sure it's more clear.
Okay.
And I
thank you.
understand, I see the confusion, but I can definitely clarify this as far as the.
Okay, I just
position.
wanted to know which,
Yes.
if it's a JADU, that triggers the house, but if it's a separate ADU, it just triggers the sprinklers in the ADU.
Yes, the JADU, if it's within the confines of the existing house, it has to be within the confines, so that would not trigger the.
Okay, so this is where it's like an attached with a breezeway, but isn't that still considered a JADU?
No.
Okay.
no.
Okay, so in that case, it would be an add-on to the increasing square footage?
Yes.
And it would trigger the whole house?
Possibly, yes. But
Okay.
I will clarify it in the
Okay.
questions for
Okay,
for the
perfect.
benefit of our residents.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
For when you were talking about increasing the incentives, if there was an affordability covenant,
Mhm.
are we able to reduce diff fees further without affordability?
That would be entirely up to the city council. Without affordability, that would be a direction from the city council.
Okay. So right now what's on the on the table here, for our ADUs that are larger than 750 square feet with on the sample ADU permit fees, the fees that are highlighted in yellow, if those were removed, so someone wanted to bring their ADU into compliance and we waived these fees, they would save around $7,000. And if they have an ADU that's less than 750 square feet, they would save around $1,875. And then there's a suggestion or something for us to get feedback on. If they put an affordability covenant, we could then waive further diff fees.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm interested in making this, I'm using the word pilot, but we don't have to use the word pilot if we don't, but coming back in a year and seeing where so that's why I use that word pilot, right? Pilot it for a year. And then in a year we look, okay, so how many people actually took advantage of the program? How much money have we actually used? And then make adjustments if we're not seeing anybody taking advantage of the program, because we have committed to allocating a certain amount of funds and we want those funds to go towards the program that we have. And I've seen, other cities are doing a lot of different things. Some are doing an additional incentive, for instance, if people rent, if they build an ADU and they rent to locals, for instance. So we're having people who are working in Norco, right? We see that. I see that a lot of time online, people working here looking for a place to be. So we could incentivize, a certain amount maybe for that. I certainly support the an increased incentive with affordability, but want to come back and definitely look at it in a year and see how we're doing, since this is a new program.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all your work on
Oh,
this.
you're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Bash?
Actually, quite a few questions, but I'm going to do a few. So if you go out and inspect and you find out somebody's living in that and they can't afford to do this, what happens?
Well, and that's where the responsibility falls on the homeowner. They'll do the self-assessment. We can ask for, they can ask for a virtual inspection. But again, the goal is not to, if there's no health and safety issues that require immediate, be taken care of immediately, the people would be allowed to stay in the ADU.
What if a neighbor turned them in? And it's an illegal housing unit?
They can still be eligible to go through the process, and that's part of an incentive.
What if they can't afford it?
That's an interesting question.
It's not a trick question.
Yeah. And that's something that, I see what you're saying. Like if somebody turns them in and we go through the whole process.
They would be required to move, correct?
Well, they would
keep getting cited.
They would be required, they would be given time, but obviously they would be given time to comply, but they would have to bring the unit into compliance.
Or vacate.
Yes.
And again, it's not a trick question.
Yeah. Makes me think though, that's good.
The property value on a plus side would probably go up if you had two residents, you had a house and an ADU on the property, which probably would be more than the fees that we're looking at charging right now. Probably.
Well, depending on what the assessor says.
And your taxes will go up. That was already covered. Now, the housing fund, let's say a person comes in and says, I really want to comply. How much money can I get to cover this?
That's a good question. I mean, that's something that the city council, if we want to put a limit to how many each homeowner would be, well, I guess the recommendation, it depends on the type of permit. If it's more than, if the unit is more than 750, staff's recommending that, it'd be half of the diff fees. That's what we're going for. Or if it's less than 750, then it's whatever building permit fees. So that's where we're putting the allowances at. If the council wants to raise that's entirely within your purview.
So in in the list that you have of sample permit fees,
Mhm.
how many are state, that the state's requiring us to, can you tell us which ones those are? That we're required to charge?
Yes, the ones that are, let's see, the ones that are not in yellow and not in blue, those are fees, are pass-through fees that we have to collect.
So the yellow on the left or the yellow down the middle?
No, if you see on the project sample where it lists all the required fees,
Right.
those are fees that we basically have to collect. They're not city fees that we could waive.
So the water capital fund,
Yes.
that we can waive? So all the blue ones we can waive?
Yes, those are the fees, as clarified in blue.
No, I'm just trying to get to this list. The MSHCP,
That's a county fee.
we're required.
Yeah.
School fees,
Yeah, that's without.
$5,724.05.
That's an average. Again, this is based on an ADU and it could be less depending on the site. of the ADU.
$5,000 for a second water meter. Required to do that. Fire sprinkler permit if required on average cost. What else above that is? So address, plan check, building, fire plan, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, water, sewer, connection fee, construction demolition, new storm drain, new rooftop. These are all those down to general plan maintenance fee. Those are all things that we charge and can adjust.
Yes, the addressing fee, the building permit fee, the mechanical permit fee.
And the strong motion impact California Building Standards Administration fee, well, that you can keep, it's only $7.48.
Yeah, that's required. That's a pass-through fee.
All right, so the strong motion impact fee is required.
Mhm.
California Building Standards admit fee is required.
Yes.
The water sewer fund connection fee is required.
Is that the water capital fund? No, that's the.
Connection fee. And the construction and demolition deposit can be refunded. I'm assuming that's ours.
That's a state mandated fee for refuse related
Yeah.
to CNT construction. We have to take that deposit. We're not allowed to not take that deposit.
Scanning and archive fee.
Mhm.
Is that, okay? Technology fee.
That's ours.
Are you okay? I feel bad for you. No, you're fine. So, all right, I'll talk about that later. And then what happens if you have an ADU, somebody's trying to legalize it and it's above 1,195 square feet? And again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here.
No, those are good
I'm
questions.
not frustrated with staff or anybody in this room. I'm frustrated with state.
And those are good questions. Those are things that we actually have to evaluate should the case be. Now, that's something that I would have to look into. It's a very good question.
And again, I'm not frustrated with you.
Understood.
And then I know on my street I live on Pedley, from 5th to 8th, there's 17 of these. 17. And there's probably more than that if you don't count the junior ADUs, none of which are legal. And I guess my question is, if you're allowed to stay in it, unless somebody turns you in and you're going to make a move, why would you spend
Peace of mind.
peace of mind?
Well, there is benefit. Again, there's benefit.
No, I'm with you. I understand. I agree. And then I have one other question. Is it my understanding anything permitted like before 59 or 65 or something, we don't allow those to be permitted, or they have to be totally brought up to current standards?
No. If it's the cutoff date is 2018 January 1st, anything before that is eligible to go through this. And again, we would be looking for not necessarily compliance with current building code standards. We need to address health and safety issues, and that's actually an incentive to move forward And it's the state requirement as well, an incentive to move forward. It makes it easier actually to have people, legalize their units. And again, one of the things that's that the program is unfortunately not everybody's going to be able to come forward with this. And an important thing is that as a pilot program, we'll look at it for a year. We need to tweak it. We'll bring it back and move forward. So.
And that's all the questions I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, may I add also too, just as a reminder, this is an element of our housing element that we committed to do. As part of our housing element is to offer this ADU amnesty program. So just a reminder, that's why we embarked on this adventure. So it's definitely fraught with some peril in terms of understanding the intended and unintended consequences, but we committed to do this. I think the idea of looking at it as a pilot is a wise one, and we can tweak as we go. I would also add, just with regard to folks who are maintaining a substandard unit with people in it, at the end of the day, they can still be held accountable for that. We're not looking for slumlords who are going to, take advantage of people and keep them in substandard units. They do have to meet those basic health and safety standards. Now, the state's limiting us to just those basic health and safety standards, but they do need to keep those. If they don't, then yes, they can be the subject of code enforcement and go through that citation process. And ultimately, there are other remedies that the state has for landlords who, maintain substandard conditions. It can be very serious. So
I'm glad you brought that up. So the state's requiring us to have so many arena numbers, which we have no control of. Is there any money that the state will give us to make these units legal?
there is state grant money available for various forms, but it's typically tied to affordability. So that may be something we can explore to the extent there's interest in providing affordability in some of these units. But really the units are tied, the money is tied to affordability.
I mean, they're pushing this as affordable units. It would seem to me maybe we can look at that. Anyway, that's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions. I think most of them have been covered. So are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Mayor, we have one public comment card from Randy Maroney.
I try to get this done in 3 minutes. That's going to be rough. So I have a question to the council, and I'm going to give you a little background drop. I've been at this a year and 8 months to get an ADU approved. 8 months ago, I had to hire a lawyer because I cannot get the staff of Norco to move. So I'm frustrated because I'm unable to get it done. So my question is that I have a house, 1975, live with my parents. I take care of my parents. My dad's 83, my mom's blind. They're both on their retirement. I'm disabled, and so I have limited funds. It seems to be, when you look at this plan, and I'm not looking at all the pages you are, but there's gaps and holes in this thing big time. So I'd be cautious of what you do because some of the statements made are not true. So let's look at the way my instance, let's don't go with that fix. Let's go with the fix of what I'm going through. 1975, my house was pulled with permits, signed off by the city of Norco. Building, site plan, engineering, school fees, sewer fees, fire, and health and safety was met. You come out with Willdan, I think it is, the outside company that you have. They've been to my home. Code enforcement's been out the home. Again, he stated about, writing a citation on neighbor's complaint. Been there for 33 years. I do not live in a shack. I do not live in a chicken coop. I bought the home the way it is. I live there to take care of my parents. It'd be an asset I have to leave. I've received numerous citations after putting my application in for ADU, and they continue with threats. If you look at what Governor Newsom said, it said you're to sustain, park it until the ADU is approved. That doesn't happen. The other thing is that I have all the original 1975 plans, engineering drawings. I did hire an engineer. My engineer did do the plans. I went through planning. I paid the fees. But now all of a sudden, I go to engineering. My engineer, 8 plans later, we still don't have it approved. Then it gets approved and moves on. From my understanding, now it's in the building department tied up there. My lawyer's contacted many times, and from my understanding, that delay is they don't know what to charge me. Because I don't have no construction. There is no building. There's nothing I have to do. The house is ready. I invited Kevin Bash to come take a look. He said, a beautiful home. Your code enforcement officer comes out, says, what a beautiful home. The next day I receive a citation. The next day. So what's that all about? So this should have been done, your ADU plan should have been done 3 years ago when this thing came out. And the thing is that this is all over the place. I mean, it's just not right, because if I have permits that are already approved in 1975 for my home, which is detached and approved, I have to pay fees all over again for everything. I'm not building anything. So it basically boils down to an inspection. That's it. I already met health and safety. We asked them to write a report. They refused to write a report to my attorney. They stood there in my garage with your code enforcement officer and said they would. And they said, well, it's not needed. And then they write an Instagram. So I'm stuck in a rock and a hard spot. That's why I hired an attorney to take care of it. So my attorney requested me to come and speak because it's not right. It's all over the place. Staff has kicked me to the curb more than once in the lobby. There's nothing there. There's no foundation at all. I know what you're trying to do here, and I got a minimal staff report that I read, and I don't have the time to go through all the incidents that this is. I've read Newsom's book so much I'm blue in the face with it. All I want to do is get my ADU approved. So my question to my attorney was today that I talked to, what are the fees? He said, Alma says she don't know what to charge me. But to wait to this meeting right here, and you guys are going to come up with a solution to move my unit forward so I can take care of my parents and stay in my home. That's all I ask. Been here 33 years. I don't live in a shack. I live in a nice house. I took care of it with no construction since 1975 other than paint and maintenance, general upkeep. So why should I have to pay for all those fees? It's not being built, it's not added JDU or whatever you want to call it. So my statement is to get this done. I'm a year and 8 months, and I'm spending a lot of money for my attorney to try to get this approved. So my time is a one-time administration fee to be done with this. Then you can go through all this. I'm all right with it. Because it's got big gaps. Newsom's not a perfect book either. It's got gaps. And you get tied up in litigation. I'm not here to fix Norco. I'm just here to get my ADU so I can take care of my parents. So that's my request. Because I'm done. I'm getting nowhere. And now we're in building. Where's it going to go from there? Planning? You tied up with planning? Go back to engineering? It's all over the place.
All right, I've given you 2 extra minutes. We
Thank you for your
appreciate
time.
your comments. Thank you.
Mayor, I have no further comments on
Okay,
this item.
thank you. So we will bring it back to council for discussion and action. Any comments to my left? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I think the gentleman just spoke. We need to give that to the city manager, and it needs to be looked at separately. That's something that I've been involved in, and I'm truthfully, it's not on the agenda, so I cannot talk about it. But it's something that I'm frustrated with, or to quote my friend, frustrated with. So I'd like that to be looked at and to move that forward. The whole reason for doing this is to try to find ways creatively to comply with the state of California's demands that everybody build low-income housing. We have so many of these ADUs, and you make a good point, truthfully, Lori, that I didn't think about, is that a lot of these are substandard, and that's not good. You get a fire. In fact, we just had a fire where we had a slumlord that people were living in hallways. But there's also a lot of really nice ADUs out there. And the problem is that with these costs, nobody's going to do it. And then if you get in a situation where you have a family that just can't afford it. So I think for me, before I can vote for this, because I like the direction, I'd like to find out if we can explore funding sources to help people, to truly assist people for these low income. I think we can work on the fees a little bit. I'd love to have a conversation with Alma and maybe really sit down, because I asked you a bunch of questions that we got to clear up. But I think that in tandem with this, we've got to find funding sources if in fact they're out there. I don't even know. How much do we have in the housing fund? You know, Lisette? $12. I'm teasing. We have several million, correct? Yeah. So maybe we can help in that direction. But at the same time, I also know enough that people have to have skin in the game. Because ultimately, even if the fees were, let's say, $20,000, their property value is going to improve significantly. Significantly. So, but right now, I just have too many questions to support this. I mean, you were totally right, Lori. We brought this because we want to legalize these things. I mean, what is our arena number we have to meet?
No, 454.
What is it?
454.
450, whatever it is.
Yeah, 54.
If we meet that number, we don't have to do anything for 10 years or so, correct? 8 years, which means that we hold off developers who want to bring in projects that probably are not good for the city of Norco. So another aspect of this, I guess, is that, I mean, years ago, I legalized my caretaker unit, cost me money, but the point is that technically, I guess that could be a unit. I'm not sure how a caretaker unit works, but if you do, for every one of those we put into, and including the junior ADUs, that is a housing number that helps us get to our goal. But I just have a feeling, I heard the mayor and Councilman Newton, this is a tough row to hoe because it just costs so much, unless we can find a funding source. And if we can do that, then I'd be a happy camper. So I'm going to give you yet another impossible job. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Alleman?
No, I just wanted to reiterate that this program is designed for unpermitted. Correct.
Unpermitted, yes.
Yes. So these are folks, neighbors who have built units without going through the planning or the building process. And certainly, I think that we, as the city, have a responsibility to make sure that people are safe. And so when we talk about health and safety, we don't want any of our residents living in a unit that is not. So there's not a resolution or anything with this. It's just asking that we review the program and provide input. I feel from what I've heard from my colleagues is there's consensus on the program. The sticking points seem to be the fees, how much assistance we're providing to hopefully incentivize people who have permitted units to go through this. Certainly, we could approve the pilot and still see if we can seek funding sources for affordability. Can we, do the fees have to be decided right now? Would we need to bring the whole thing back?
Well, the reality is, if I don't have direction on the fees, we can't really
There's
go.
no program.
There's no program. I mean, I don't know that people would just come forward to legalize without any incentives such as fees.
Okay. Then for me, I guess I would just ask my colleagues if there's any more feedback on the fees. If we're able to come to a consensus tonight, at least to start a pilot, I'd be curious to hear of any other feedback on that.
And again, that's staff's recommendation. We can begin to implement it to at least be able to help, some of the people that are coming forward. And then, if we don't get anybody, and we can, while we're looking at potential other sources of funding, so at least we get it started and see if it's working or not. That's staff recommendation. So for us to be able to at least start to see where it leads us. And for us in the meantime to explore other funding options.
And we committed $250,000 from our housing fund for our housing element. So that money we have said we will spend on this program.
Yes. If I can add to on that, as Alma spoke, so for the resident that's here tonight, we have held, he may or may not have to pay us a fee. That's why I'm guessing this is what the meaning is about what we need to charge him, because we held off charging him one of these fees because if we adopt the program, he wouldn't have to pay as much. So we've held him off so that it didn't seem fair to have him pay the full freight and then the next day adopt a program where he would have to pay less.
Yes.
So again, a little clarity would help us, at least for the interim. We at least have one resident. I'm not sure if there's others in the pipeline, and we can visit further later.
Councilmember Newton.
This item, we're not taking action on though. It's just to provide input, correct?
Yes, and staff would come back at the next meeting with the resolution, basically putting into action the direction on the fees.
Okay. So you have a list of questions and answers to get. And Catherine, I'm with you on the pilot program approach. I would just put a little asterisk by the fire protection conversation that was had, and have some clarification on that, because that's always going to be just, it's the fire marshal's decision on that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, typically the way I understand it, if the house has fire protection, has sprinklers, and your ADU is attached, you're putting sprinklers in it. As far as fees, I don't know if I want to hammer all that out right now. I mean, maybe if you take my colleagues' suggestions, okay, when you bring it back to us, and maybe can have a further discussion, because I'd need more time to review some of these, and then the impacts that it would be to the city, and then what can we waive, what we can reduce. I just don't want to take a blanket, only charge school fees and call it good, right? So,
But we are backfilling those fees, correct? The 250,000
Right.
from the housing fund, we're not. That's
Yeah.
not.
No, so the $250,000 from the housing fund can only be used to promote affordability. So that funding can only be used when there's an ADU that's going to have an affordability covenant on it. The anything else we expend in the event in the form of foregone fee revenue goes to those respective funds.
Okay. So, yeah. And what is the covenant needed for affordability to be able to use the housing funds? Is it 45 years, 40 years?
I believe it's 45 for rental and 55 for
yeah, I
homeownership.
thought it was 55.
Yeah,
Depends on if it's for rent or
it's-
for homeownership.
Yes, it depends.
45 years. Okay. Okay, because right now, the amount that we're suggesting is and this is an average, right? Because they did averages based on square footage. It's around 7,000 somewhere, give or take, depending on how big or small. The ADU is over 750 square foot, and for under 750, it's around 1875. But obviously, if it's smaller, it's less.
Yeah, it's gonna, yes,
Per unit,
per unit.
if we get
Well,
any units.
Well, you're only allowed one ADU and then junior ADU.
Right.
Councilmember Newton, any other comments or questions? Councilmember Hannah?
Yeah, I want to come back in one day next week and talk to Alma about some of this thing before we go any further on it. I was going to catch her yesterday and she was out, so.
I guess my input, Alma, would be that what staff has proposed would be a good starting point, especially if we're going to pilot it. And then the other comment I had is when we look at potentially going after additional funding, you have to have something in place. They're not going to give you grant money for an idea. So my kind of thought process would be that we get something in place so that we have the ability to apply for some of those dollars and get that money in hand to help, offset the cost of the program. So that's where I'm at. Any other discussion? I certainly don't think people are going to be beating down our doors and staff's going to be overwhelmed with people coming in for this program, right? So looking at, what works and what doesn't, and then we can go from there. So anything else? Does that give you enough or probably not?
Well, there's a lot of information that it sounds like the council wants clarification. So we're not, as of right now, I don't have consensus on the fees. So, okay.
Mayor, if I may, maybe what we can do to give you kind of a straw man, we'll go at the next meeting, or maybe not the next meeting, but at a subsequent meeting. We'll bring you back a straw man of a resolution, and then you can tinker with that. That'll be maybe a place for your discussion to kind of give you the format, but things lined up. In the meantime, we'll work on some of the answers to some of the questions that we've heard tonight and get that back out to all of you. Okay?
You know, and don't get me wrong, I know I sounded negative, but I want this to work. And I'm just not sure how to make it work. I mean, the state, everybody they want us to do certain things, but at the same time, they're handcuffing us. And so it's just a little bit frustrating. That's all.
Yeah, it's called unfunded mandates. They do it all the time. All right. Item number 7 is our public hearing for this evening. And then just as public information, so the presentation for the public hearing is going to have the staff report and presentation. Council will be able to ask questions of staff. I will open the public hearing and we'll have public comment. I will close the public hearing, and then at that time, council will then have discussion and action on this item. So item 7A is an appeal hearing. And so,
Yes, we have our
Yes.
senior planner.
Madam Mayor, I have
Yes.
a conflict. I have to leave.
oh, okay,
Talk to the city attorney. I'm conflicted out.
okay. Colin, do you have to say anything with that?
I do, yes. Councilman, Mayor Pro Tem Bash has informed me that he owns a similar business that's very close to the property. And although I didn't see a one-for-one conflict it was discussing, it was belt and suspenders and a good idea to avoid any appearance of a conflict. So we decided it was best for him to recuse. And I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem's diligence in seeing the conflict and deciding to step out.
All right, very good. All right, so our senior planner.
Madam Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Again, this is an appeal of CUP 2023-07. The applicant is Tim and Jennifer Cook. This appeal is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision of the CUP, which allowed a total of 38 animal units and 7 dogs on their property, subject to a sunset clause. The applicant has appealed the Planning Commission decision and is requesting that the City Council allow a total of 40 animal units and 7 dogs, with a number of dogs subject to a sunset clause. So real quick, the sunset clause, I want to explain that. The sunset clause essentially, the property is allowed 7 dogs with the initial approval of the CUP. However, the number of dogs are gradually reduced through attrition. Like when the dog leaves the property, passes away, or the owner of the dog leaves the property, that number of dogs gradually reduces until they reach a baseline number of 4. So that's what that sunset clause is. Here's the property, 4680 Pedley Avenue. As you can see, the property is accessed on the west side of Pedley. See the single family house there adjacent to the street, along with the animal keeping areas on the rear. These are the project plans for the project. So you can see again, the existing house along Pedley, as well as the horse corrals along the south property line and 2 horse corrals on the north. Staff did look at the request and animal control based on their inspections on site and their analysis of this request. They did recommend that a total of 38 animal units and 7 dogs be allowed on the property, and that is what the Planning Commission approved. So therefore, staff recommends that the City Council uphold the Planning Commission's decision, which again is in line with Animal Control's recommendation. With that, I conclude the presentation, and Planning and Animal Control staff is here to answer any questions.
All right, very good. So Councilmember Hannah, do you have any questions of staff? Okay, Councilmember Newton, any questions of staff at this time?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. Good evening. May need Alma to pull out her calculator. So, understanding how we got with lot sizes and animal units, and it's 18.13, I believe, correct? So my question is on the site plan, just a small one that you approved, that you presented to the Planning Commission. In the way I operate is I try to back into some of these numbers. I understand that animal units are figured on just gross footage, right?
Correct.
And that, as we all know in planning, every lot in Norco is different, right? So kind of falls back into how it's laid out, coverage, et cetera. At least in my mind, this is how I try to go through it. So on the site plan that's in our packet, overall acreage, 94,960 square feet. It's shown as far as coverage, I'll take it just as floor area, 11,027. Total lot coverage is 20%. My question is, I can't figure 20% on this. So usually when I do like floor area ratio or lot coverage, I take the gross floor area divided by total gross. And I'm coming up with 12%.
So you're referring to the lot coverage that it seems less than what is
Yeah,
noted in
on this
standard?
site plan, I guess I re-asked the question. Did you verify the 11,027 total area of all structures, right? So that would be the lot coverage, right? Floor area. Includes the house, the
Yes, that's
barns,
correct.
all of that.
Yes, that's
all right?
correct.
You divide that by the total area, the 94,000 feet. Okay. I don't get 20%, but the site plan says 20%.
So you're, yes, so basically, it was a conservative approach. So you're saying it's a lot less than 20%? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is typically, we use the square footages that are given to us based on the site plan. So, if
We don't
it's,
verify that?
actually, you mean go out and measure the structures on the property?
I mean, at least verify, wouldn't it be prudent at least to verify the math on the site plan that you're presenting to the planning commission? But tell me if I'm wrong on those numbers.
No, you're correct. You're correct. Based on your observation of the site plan, it appears that it's a lot less than the 20%. Is that-
Right.
Yeah.
I got 11 and change or something, so I went to 12. They're just kind of, what I'm trying to say is,
Understood. Yeah. Based
Okay.
on the numbers that were provided on the site plan, that's the percentage that was given to us.
so I guess my recommendation before it goes to planning,
Yes. Understood.
that we verify site plans to make sure the planning commission has proper information if they back into numbers like I do. Okay. So we'll leave that. And just to make sure on this, so up to 60,000 square feet, you can have 16 animal units, right?
That's correct.
One animal unit for every additional 4,000 feet. I know that's the number. I mean, are you double
Sorry, let me
checking
take
me?
a look at the code.
If you'd like to move on, it's 4,000 feet. Okay.
So once you get to 60,000, yeah, once you get to 60,000 square feet,
Right.
for each additional animal unit above 60,000, it's one additional animal unit for every 4,000 square feet.
Correct.
You are correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is back into this where you came up to the recommendation of 38 animal units. That's all I want to try to get my bearings on.
Okay.
So it, in theory, comes out to be 37 and an ear and a tail, right? So 38's the number that works on this. So I think it was more of like planning commission and council to have proper information when it's presented to us. You know, and we should verify site plan setbacks and things like that.
Sure. And if the council would like to, the recommendation for the additional animal units above what's allowed by right
Right.
is usually comes from a formula that's calculated by our animal control division.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's how we get the recommendation for the additional animal units above what's allowed by right.
Right. Well, I guess I should have backed into that. With that,
Mm-hmm.
at the 94,000, it comes to 22 animal units
Mm-hmm.
by right.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Animal control usually goes half again.
Half again is what it's allowed.
Correct.
Correct. Mhm.
Right.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so I should correct myself and say, actually, it's 22 units plus
Yes.
the additional.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Alma. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Another question. Okay, Councilmember Alderman.
Yes, my question is similar to Greg's, but just to ask if there's any other, when I read this, what I read was on page 4 of the attachments, Norco Animal Services standards on CUPs is to allow half of what is legally allowed. I wanted to know if there was any other reasoning that went into determining the number, the additional number.
I think I can have Melvin speak on that.
The number was based off of, sorry, hear me? Okay. The number as it's seen is based off of what the property is legally allowed. So when we did the math, it came out to 25, and then half of that came out to 12.5, which we round up to 13. So that's how we got to 38 units.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, there were no other factors that went into the number that was determined. Okay.
That was it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Melvin, before you go, I did have a question. So on the site map, it shows 40 stalls. You've inspected the property. Are all 40 stalls currently in place? And then the secondary question, what your opinion is of the conditions of the stalls, or are there varying conditions of the stalls on the property?
All 40 stalls are still there in place. My recommendation is still stands at 38. It's up to city council if they would like to grant more.
Okay. Are the conditions of all 40 stalls appropriate?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Any other questions? Or
Well, excuse me, while we got Melvin up here. The total size of this property is 2 acres, 2.18 acres, correct? Or is that 10? I can't.
I would have to log back into Parcel Quest, but
2.18. All right, so the way I've always understood it is, and you're allowed 5 horses on a half an acre, regardless of how many buildings you got on there. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, so that's where you're getting the 38. Excuse me, you're getting the 38 or 37 point whatever with the total size of the property.
That is correct.
Whether it had any buildings on it or not.
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's all. Thank you, sir.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and we'll call for public comment.
Yes, we do have public comment there. Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak. And the first speaker is Mallory Cleveland.
I currently board at Tesoro, and I have boarded at 3 previous places, one associated with a major city here locally. And I can just say personally that based off of all the places I've been, that Tesoro takes the most care of their boarders and the horses. Jen and Tim both go above and beyond, taking their personal time to feed and to watch and to clean the stalls daily, provide, waste management. They get pickup every single day. I've been at places where they dump the manure in the pasture with the horses, so this is definitely a step up. So I don't see any issue in an extra 2 horses, just being able to give them that extra cushion to be able to provide bucket cleaners and stall cleaners on a daily basis. Just the things that keep us happy and keep the horses healthy and in great condition.
Our next speaker is Jessica Townsend.
I chew board at Tesoro. I have 3 horses I keep there, and like what Mallory mentioned, they take the best care of the horses, the best care of the property. I've been at places where I spent, hundreds more than what I spend now there, and I had way less of the care or the consideration from the staff. There were nails and things like that all over the floors, and it seemed like that was just like a common issue that we would experience. And like she said, they pick up the waste daily. I've been at places where it's been like, are you guys going to help with this? Where they kind of ignore it or make it seem like, horses poop all the time, we can't control it. When they can. They just need to do better to take care of it. Jen and Tim go above and beyond, and honestly, I'm really grateful to stay where I stay. And I agree with her as well. 2 horses for the 40 stall that they have is worth it, and it gives them that cushion to be able to keep that type of care up and maintain it. So, sorry, a little nervous, but I appreciate you guys taking the time.
The next speaker is, I believe, Kristen Catablanco. Sorry about the last name.
Street. We border Tesoro. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it to the last meeting, secondary to the work issue. I did write a very detailed letter, which I would prefer not to go over again. I'm hopeful that it has been read already. But over the course of the year, since they bought the place September 20th, 2022, I have been witness to the lack of feeding, the lack of watering, the continued forced death, the continued forces out. It's concerning. It's extremely concerning. Their dog has been in my property multiple times. Outside. The dog has been in my yard chasing my dog as well as myself. Upon reporting it to the animal control, I have gotten a lot of pushback saying that it has been safe, healthy, and so forth over there, which is interesting because actually, per the documentation and the agenda that was posted last month, as of September 20th of 2022, upon the sale from Dave and Lori Hall's house, the conditional use permit that was put into place in 1998 for 38 horses and 4 dogs is null and void. And they have been operating with 38 plus horses in that backyard without a conditional use permit until someone brought it to meeting. So in March, upon several complaints, I think it was Officer Morris went out and counted the horses and said that there were 37 horses and that the conditional use permit was no issue whatsoever because they were in compliance. But they were actually never in compliance because they never had a conditional use permit because it was null and void as of September when they said. So it's concerning to me that us as Norconians have to manage our yards, our animals, our business licensures, and I know my mom does, I know that I do, and I know that you guys do as well, as I'm sure Kevin Bash does, who runs a boarding facility. And these people have not had to, and it's very, very, very disturbing. I personally wish that they could only continue with the 25 that they have on their property. The people that had the property before were very thorough, very clean, were very animal oriented, and ran a boarding facility since 1998. Pro rodeo, cutting, reining, they've done it all. They've seen it all, and they, are very, very knowledgeable. These people are not, and it's very concerning to me.
And so I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I have to, say such negative things, but unfortunately it is 100% the truth. And I'm very sorry that Norco has failed in a sense. We are Norco Horse Town USA, and here we're not managing our horses or any other things. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Lori Peacock.
I'm not sick. I have asthma. I forgot my inhaler today, so I apologize. But this is really important to me that I speak here this evening. I own a home in Norco. I've lived here since 2011. I have my own horse stalls in my backyard, which I recently just sold, and moved my horses to Tesoro Farm. And I moved them there because I trust this facility implicitly. They are meticulous in the way they treat their boarders, the way they treat the animals. They take care of my horses when I'm not able to be there. So I went ahead and sold my stalls because I trust them that much that I don't need my horses at my own property anymore. And these people I've only been there since January of 23, when I moved them over. And I don't know them very well. I'm not here because they're my friends. I'm just here to speak on what's right. The woman that was standing here previously, I've witnessed her screaming, hurling insults. I've witnessed her using profanity in front of their children. And I'm just here to support them. They deserve to have not to be harassed by people that are in the community, and they deserve to have a business. They put their life savings into this business, and I completely support them. So thank you very much.
The next speaker is Alexandra Moeller.
I'm contesting the approval of 38 or 40 horses to anyone that has never owned a ranch. As a resident of this city in Norco, living less than a mile from them and having friends that bordered there, I became concerned with my friends brought up a fire evacuation and being completely disregarded in our city, the fire evacuation plan. So I discussed fire evacuation and its importance to one of the boarders, which I was friendly with, that took the subject very lightly, and I was met with such hostility from Mrs. Cook. After the boarder wanted to know the evacuation protocol. If fire evacuation is being met with such immature behavior that could jeopardize the health of my nearby horses, with smoke inhalation, dropping ashes, and no combined unity, that scares me. If Mrs. Cook acknowledged this with importance, I wouldn't even stand here right now. I know surrounding ranchers have a plan. They're known welcome the fact that I do. I believe that any unsuspecting boarder being blinded by the aesthetics, many without experience themselves, should be confident knowing that their horse is being cared for by experienced ranchers. Horses have been pulled because they were losing weight at a high rate of speed. Noticing water buckets being bone dry, and just recently, Lori Peacock herself even said on Facebook that her horse was dehydrated, but she felt it was her responsibility. Isn't food, water, shelter, health, and safety a barn owner's responsibility? From no boarding experience to having 38 or 40 horses is very irresponsible and greedy at the cost of the health of the animals. I understand learning curves will be there, but after boarders had concerns about health and safety, especially nutrition, water, and fire evacuation, boarders are being met with outrageous competitive behavior by the cooks. Other boarders won't say anything because they fear retaliation. My friend's horse's water was turned off by owners, and that is recorded on her camera. To solve their problem, they hired a mid-20s to oversee the entire operation, who that represented herself as a vet tech, being a massage therapist, and has made medical decisions for horses that should have seen a vet right away. Alone taking authority to such an extent is not a ranch manager's job. Stating that after heavy rain, water was good for horses' feet when horses are standing in flooded stalls, obviously not understanding the health consequences either as a ranch manager. A bigger concern of mine is that this could affect my Norco living. Some folks are looking to reach out to animal rights group, feeling their concerns are not being heard by our city that could affect our entire horse community with more rules and regulations. I love our town, the rodeos, the parades, the sorting, and the roping. My recommendation is allow them to grow their ranch responsibly and not to put horses and community at risk with greed and ego. Ego allows no room to grow, and it will be in their hands how fast their ego can be set aside to grow their ranch. Thank you for letting me.
Our next speaker is Zach Meyer.
Hi guys, I just want to thank you guys for letting me come and talk. So I actually do live in the ADU right behind them. Thanks to some of our, friends back then to help us. I just want to say Tim and Jen has helped me and my wife raise my son so far. My wife has type 1 diabetic. She's on dialysis. She recently lost her toe on an amputation. I'm sure some of you guys have seen her in the last meeting. My son is my world. I want him to grow up in Norco. I wished all my life to move to Norco. I've had horses for 15 years. I lived up in Tahunga. I boarded up there. I don't know if you guys know Dale Gibson. He's a very close friend of mine. He ran a barn up there, and I've taken what he's made up there and helped Tim and Jen. I'm not a ranch hand there. I do live there, but I do check horses throughout the night. It doesn't matter if I wake up at 2:30 in the morning to go to work at LAX as a union electrician. But I will check the horses in the middle of the night if I feel like something is weird. I will stand out there and help anybody that needs it. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how big the horse is, how small the horse is. I will be out there to help you any way I can. Yes, there has been things that happen, but Tim and I have gone to the extensions to try our best to meet your guys' terms. It doesn't matter if it was exporters or whatever. We appreciate you guys just giving us feedback and everything. Even if it's negative, we take it in consideration to help better the ranch and stuff. And I just want my son to grow up on the ranch and learn the responsibilities of how to actually take care of horses. Learn that there's responsibility taken if something has happened. He's out there. He's a year and a half. But this is our happy place, and I would hate to see it just, I want other people to see it also. Like, you guys could show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I will walk you guys around the ranch. It doesn't matter. You guys could come at 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 a.m. I'll be out there if you guys want. I encourage you guys to come and check it out. That's pretty much it. Thank you guys. I have a lot on my mind. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sheriff Matthews.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I have kept my horse at Tesoro since June. The place is immaculate and the horses are very well cared for. Anyone who disagrees has either not been there, is complaining about prior conditions, or has been misinformed. Tesoro's fitness as a facility was already decided in August, so I will not be speaking to that tonight. Rather, I want to relay my own story to you. When I moved to California 4 years ago, I knew Norco was a special place the first time I drove through it. From the horse-themed restaurants and stores to the welcome sign and hitching posts, Horsetown, USA was a place I wanted to be a part of. The streets give it an old-fashioned country town atmosphere. Going through Norco and seeing horses at nearly every house, as well as the trails that line the streets, it was a dream come true for the little girl in me. After I attended several parades down 6th Street and rodeo events at George Ingalls Park, I came to love Norco more. I decided I wanted to have my own horse to board here so that I could also enjoy this amazing place on horseback. That was made possible in May of this year when I found Tesoro Farms and was able to secure a stall for my horse. As someone who has boarded horses on both the East and West coasts, I can testify Tesoro is a win-win for both the animals and their owners. Being there has certainly been a dream come true for this small town girl from back east. When I moved to California, I never imagined I would find this hidden treasure of a town right in my backyard. And now I am so grateful to be a part of this community. Tesoro Farms is a place that offers a country feel, a warmth, and a sense of family, completely in keeping with the feel of the town. It's hard to find that these days, no matter where you look. By allowing Tesoro to utilize the 2 additional stalls already on the property, you are offering the dream that is Norco to 2 more families, perhaps even little girls. Please grant this request. It would be a shame not to share this amazing place. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker, Gracie Cook and Shaylee.
Hello, I'm Shaylee. I board my horse at Terreso Farm. I have a pretty incredible story about the owner Jen. One night when I was in town, my horse was attempting to fall and was having neurological issues, and Jen came to our rescue as quickly as she could along with Jill as they stayed up all night with my horse Poppy. They were with the vet assuring they were doing what's best. The vet worked on my horse that even every intent to put my horse down, and she believed it was the only thing we could do. Jen had a gut feeling something wasn't right and noticed only when she was about to inject. And Captain begged the vet to let her walk around and start walking. She started walking perfectly fine and was now floating in her. If she didn't go off of her gut, then I'd like to add that while it sounds extremely biased, as the owner's daughter, both my mom and dad care about horses more than they do themselves. Every time a horse has been sick or injured, she's there and in as much pain.
Our next speaker is Gloria Link.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I won't take long, and I agree with all the positive things that has been said about the Tesoro Farm. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my experience as a boarder. On June 26th, I was at the barn like I am every single day. It was an early afternoon. It was really hot, well over 100 degrees. I was sitting inside my horse's stall with an ice pack on my neck when I started sweating a lot and my left arm started to hurt. I called Jen, and then right away, Tim, who came out and checked up on me. I sat in my horse's stall for a little bit longer. When another boarder came and started to walk towards me, we went towards the front, and Morgan, who also lives on the property, she brought in some food for me and some water. When I found a chair and I sat down, the other boarder stayed with me until Morgan came out and brought me some water and extra food to eat. I started feeling a little better. I was asked if I felt I needed to go to the hospital. At that time, I didn't know I was having a heart attack. I'm stubborn, and I decided to just go home and get some rest. As soon as my daughter got home around 7 p.m., she rushed me to the hospital, because I still wasn't feeling well. Test reveals I actually had suffered a heart attack. From that moment on, Jen and Morgan, and mostly everybody from the facility, was checking up on me and checking up on my daughter. They were texting me, they were sending the videos and pictures of my horse every single day. I went into the hospital on June 26th, and I came out on July 3rd. I realized new friends I found had become my extended family. Even though it was hard being in the hospital, I knew my horse will be okay. The cooks don't just care about the horses being boarded there, they also care about the horses' owners and their well-being. To this day, everyone still checks up on me. I now take a heart medication, and I also anti-rejection pill, which I had a kidney transplant 6 years ago. You don't get that kind of treatment at any other barn. Trust me, I know that for experience. Thank you.
Our next speaker, Judy Bonham.
I'm Judy Bonham and I run Frodsham Farms. I've been here since 1983. And I was there when that property was Dave Hall's, and he is on the east side of me. And when he moved out and sold the property to them, I found not much change except for a few more horses. And I think the stalls are very well kept and they've been very nice to me. I have no complaints about how they ride their horses or take care of their horses. And I don't want to throw stones, but they are not doing a bad job as far as I can see. Thank you. And I love this town.
Next speaker, Haley Rizzuto.
Good evening. My name is Haley. I'm going to read off my phone all of the issues I have had with Tesoro Farms. To start, everything was good. I've been there for about 8 months. Everything seemed good when I first got there. Owners were very nice, very accommodating, until I started realizing little things that eventually turned into bigger things. To start, the stalls are not appropriate at all. I had my veterinarian out who mentioned it to me. There are a lot of metal pieces sticking out, and there's a place where my horse could have kicked and sliced his leg open. When I mentioned this to Tim and Jen, they told me it was my responsibility to fix the stalls. Not only to mention my horse was getting severely bit up by other horses, and when I asked if we can make arrangements moving him or other horses, I was told no because they all have their fair share, even though the other horses did not have any marks and there are cameras. Not to mention when my vet came out, she almost had to suture a lesion on his rear end due to bites from the other horses. Later that day after my vet was out that almost had to suture his lesion, she realized there was a lot of sand in his gut. Later that night, when I went to the barn, I noticed my horse was colicking. This was late at night, and to mention when Zach was up here talking about how he's constantly at the barn and is always out, he's not, because if he would have noticed my horse was beginning to colic. Later that night, after my horse was colicking, I was told I can call Jen if I ever need Banamine. I was not able to get a hold of Jen because she was out and apparently her phone was not working. Luckily, I had Banamine on hand and I had my mom bring it to me, and I was able to give it to my horse as fast as I could. The next day, my horse was improving. I asked them not to feed him because, as any horse owner should know, when a horse is colicking and not passing stool, you don't feed them. After I texted her and asked her not to feed him, she texted me understanding. Later that night, I went, my horse was fed his usual feed, and he ate all of it. When I addressed this to the owners, all I got was an apology. An apology would not have paid for my vet bills or the loss of my horse and a horrible prognosis. The owners also never came out to mention when he was colicking, asking if I needed anything or if there's anything they can do. I also want to mention my horses have lost a severe amount of weight. I have 3 horses. I have a little pony who has always maintained great weight, and in the last few months, she is super underweight. I am running out of time and there's a lot more. I do have messages proving all of this, but I just hope nobody has to deal with this and the neglect of their horses. And I hope you guys take this into deep consideration so no other horses have to pay the price of their irresponsibility and negligence. Thank you.
Next speaker, Justine Rizzuto.
Good evening. I am here this evening because I feel it is my duty as a Norconian and to do what's right and my due diligence. People can come up and say good experiences. Unfortunately, that has not been mine or my family's. That was my daughter. I did have 3 horses at this facility. I will admit it is aesthetically very nice, but as everybody knows, that does not make a great barn. I didn't have any issues in the beginning. But when I started pointing things out that my vet pointed out that we needed to inform the owners, as my daughter stated, things that could injure not just our horse, but other horses that were on both sides of them. Everything I'm stating, I just want to put in, I have videos, I have text messages, I have pictures, and it's all documented by my vet. We were told that it was our responsibility to fix. I will say on one of the issues, it did take 3 days, but Tim finally did come out and fix that after multiple heated discussions via text message. As my daughter said, my thoroughbred, which is hers, that is our show horse. He's a jumper. I have lots of money into that horse, and he was severely bitten up, and I do have a video of it, to the point to where we almost did have to suture him. When it was brought to their attention, I was told that my horse bites as well. There are cameras there, so I told them, please pull the cameras. Our horse just is not aggressive like that. All of a sudden, a couple days later, the cameras were removed, and we were told that it was Borders privacy and they're not going to have cameras anymore. So, fine, no problem. We took our videos and did what we needed to do. They refused to move the horse because they said the couple that lived in the ADU, it was her horse as well, and she can't walk very far. So we more or less, there was nothing they can do. They said we can put up stud panels. I again argued with them that I shouldn't have to put out this amount of money to accommodate a stall when there could be other accommodations made. Long story short, my fiance came and him and Tim ended up putting up a stud panel. That problem was solved. After my vet did come out that day, going back to that, I apologize. I have a lot to get through as well. My horse did colic. I have text message proof, my daughter asking them not to feed, which is horse 101. And any barn owner should know this common knowledge when it comes to horses. They fed my horse. And again, that prognosis, as you know, could have been very, very bad. Luckily, 2 days later, he did pull through. I do have good amount of vet bills because I did have to have my vet back out after that. Unfortunately, we couldn't pull the feed because he had already eaten it, and all we got was an apology. I have a lot going on, taking care of the baby, which they do help take care of, I guess, the ADU couple's baby, which is fine. But at the end of the day, you're running a barn, and that should not take precedence over other people's animals. After that happened, we decided to start looking for other boarding facilities as I think that would leave anybody a little bit nervous to leave their horses there. The minute we were found out that we were looking at other barns, I did receive a text message that we were just too quote unquote high maintenance, that we needed to start looking for other places and to leave, which was fine, no problem. I'll wrap it up. I have vet documentation about all 3 of my horses losing weight, which they have never had any problems, no underlying conditions. I have had a witness Tim, this was just brought to my attention prior, feeding my pony, which is really upsetting me, feeding my pony scraps to where my pony lost so much weight, and my vet telling me there's no way she is getting a full flake in the morning and a full flake at night. That would be impressive, a pony that's 12.2, eating that amount of food, being that skinny with no underlying conditions. I have a video of my water bucket for her being dumped out. And like I said, I have all the proof. Like I said, I can go on and I'm just getting further upset, but I feel like in Norco, there's lots of great barns. I have boarded at 2 other facilities, never had these issues. We left for different reasons other than those types of problems, but
I'm going to go ahead and cut you off because everybody stayed at their time. So, and I gave you a minute. So
no,
thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And our last speaker card, Mayor, is Christina Olmos.
Good evening. Just want to say that this is a really deserving family. I'm not friends with them, but I have boarded there for almost 2 years now. I've boarded there when the Halls owned it. I've seen many improvements. I've seen the care that they put into looking after the horses. I know you're hearing a lot tonight about some disgruntled boarders, and I think that's just going to happen, pretty much anywhere you are. You can't please everybody. I'm a quiet person. I stick to myself, and I hear everything, and I, just kind of watch everything. A lot of the trouble comes from boarders that are really not willing to put in the extra work to really care for their own horses, and they're not there daily to see what's really going on. So it's a matter of perception, in my opinion. I am there daily for multiple hours, and I do see everything that's going on. It's a very deserving family. They have plenty of room. The stalls are, I think, 24 by 40, plenty of room, 2 extra stalls for 2 additional horses, and I think it would make a great addition to this. Thank you.
Mayor, I have no further comments.
All right. Thank you very much. So just going back to our order of business at this time. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we will be bringing it back to council for discussion and action. So is there anybody that wants to start with comments or discussion? Oh, okay, Catherine has a couple.
I just have a few other questions. I read through all of the materials that were provided. So this would go to animal control. We've heard a lot of different experiences. And I know, so what I looked, basically every time the site was inspected, it was, the animals were found in adequate condition, good condition. Were all of the things that we heard tonight, were all of those submitted to the city and investigated?
Yes, they were. One of the issues about water being cut off, it was relayed to us a few days late, but when we got out there, we were actually able to determine that the reason why it was shut off, it was due to it was a good amount of leak. I actually have a video, I want to say it's about a minute and a half, but you can actually see where they scooped out some water, the water rose enough to where it was overflowing. I told them, just cut it off, I understand. There's another item that they actually called, it was the night before, and which I couldn't get out there right away, but I came right in the morning and they reported that there was a piece of metal that had cut a horse. Got out there, that piece of metal was actually shaved down. Another section was to the rear of, there's some box stalls where it was said that there was a couple pipes that were sticking out. They were actually cut down and then taped over with duct tape to prevent the jagged edges from injuring the animal. While I was also there, I could not find any metal pieces that were reported on the ground. Sometimes they said it was in the hay, but as you guys know, being in this town and with horses, sometimes the tractor will pick that up and it happens. Other than that, there were reports of certain animals that have colic and have been euthanized. From what I do know, the most recent one, the reason being that animal was euthanized is because the owner himself said he does not have thousands upon thousands to save this animal. So I completely understand him. The ones before that were actually older in age. And so to say that the cooks caused this, I cannot say that, but I do know that the animals were there before, and just seeing by their treatment, I can't make a determination on that.
Okay, and how many times were you out there investigating or checking up? And I know some of them were unannounced.
All of them are unannounced. Okay. As most people know, I normally do not like to announce my appearance. I normally just like to show up, especially if we're business, and that's what it's expected. I cannot give you an exact number. I know it was over 5, but I can't give you an exact number.
Okay, and then how is the fencing between the properties? Just with the number of dogs and hearing that a dog was on a different property, is there adequate fencing between the properties to prevent the number of dogs from moving from one property to the other?
Yes, they actually made some corrections towards the fencing. I know the last few times I were out there, there's like a lattice fencing that is on the, I wouldn't say north side, and it covers that whole area, so it prevents the dogs from getting over. And then the owners have took precautions to make sure the animals stay in.
Okay, and then with any CUP, would they be subject to any future inspections, or would those only be if there were complaints?
They have an annual inspection for their CUP, and then with them being a business and having a CUP, they also understand that they can receive an inspection at any time, especially if there is a complaint. We do follow up on that.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you. My comments. Somebody said. Go?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll see if there's any. We'll go back and forth a couple times. I'm gonna assume Councilman Knight. Both, whatever. We do what we want right now, I think.
I don't need you.
You just
I
you
don't-
just
the way
got
you're
off the
looking at
hook,
me,
Melvin. Off the hook.
Vince. Tell me how we get here with the conditional use permits, okay? With the Cooks. Halls sell their property, right? That CUP did not run with the land,
That is correct.
correct? And obviously then it's purchased by the Cooks. At what point did the Cooks come in from when they purchased the property to apply for a new conditional use permit? Do we know that? Or I'll ask the mayor to, where we can ask the applicant. If you don't have that
No,
answer.
we do not have that answer. No,
Pardon?
we do not have that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, that they came to us to apply, so that's when we, gave them the information to.
When was the application made?
Application. About a couple months ago.
Yes, I would like to say probably about 2 to 3 months ago.
Okay. I'd like, sure, Melvin. Now I need you, buddy.
That is correct. It's a few months ago. The reason how it came about is we actually do our normal, like I said, inspections.
Right.
Well, from what I remember is we went out and did inspection with the halls, and they had told me that they're going to be selling the property. I do not know when, but they said they were going to be selling the property, and then the new people would take over the CUP. Well, we did not know that it did not run with the land. It just went with the property owner, because the last condition on the contract or the condition and use permit stated that it would be void after that. So we continue business as normal because we were under the impression that it went with the land as normal CUPs we've seen before. And then once we realized that the property is not in compliance, that's when we instructed them that they need to get a CUP.
Okay. How much time do you think expired from when Halls told you we're leaving till?
I really want to say about 7, because we normally do our inspections around end of February, early May.
Mm-hmm.
So from May to September, so around that time.
All right. Thank you, Melvin. Welcome. My only other, I guess I want to say that I appreciate everyone's comments, pro, con, having enough horses in my life that, like I've told a friend of mine, horses only colic after they look at your checkbook, okay? And when they see you're getting a little bit ahead, that's the time we call the vet. But so I know it's emotional on both sides. And to me, this is just more of a land use policy and what our codes dictate on this. On the small portion that we hadn't talked much about with the dogs, that I think that what the planning commission did, the 7 now, and then by attrition, it'll go down to 4, right?
Yes.
And then it'll remain at 4.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any heartburn with that. To me, dogs don't live long enough anyways, so I'm fine with that recommendation on the dogs, even though we haven't had much discussion about that. I think that's all I'm going to say right now.
Councilmember Hanna?
Melvin, I hate to disturb you. Okay, getting over here with the dogs, when I read this yesterday, I had having a problem with that many dogs, but then I found out that 3 of them are service dogs.
From what I heard, the owner of the 3 dogs that's in the ADU is planning on going that route.
The what?
I said, from what I heard from the owner that's in the ADU, they were thinking about going that route to have the dogs be a service dog.
Right. Well, I have a lot of respect for service dogs because they're well trained to do what they're supposed to do and help save lives and everything. I appreciate that, but the sunset clause, that means when any one of the 7 passes, it goes down to the next number.
That is correct.
Okay, what if it's one of the service dogs? God forbid one of them pass away. Are they allowed to replace that service dog and keep him inside that number, or are they gonna cut him off and cause a problem where the dog's not there to do what he's supposed to do?
From what I heard from Planning Commission, that was one of the options that they said that is welcome to come back for discussion.
Okay, well, I'd have a problem with them having to discuss it. I mean, if one of the service dogs dies, I would think that they would need, if he's serving a purpose for a human, I would think that they would need to replace him immediately to do his job.
If I could jump in, under the ADA, they could make a request for reasonable accommodation. And if there was a disability-related need for the service dog, they'd be allowed to have it.
They'd be allowed to replace it?
Yes.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better on that. And on the extra 2 horses that they wanted, do they have 38 pens exactly now, 38 stalls, or they got
They have 40.
40?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, you can go sit back down, Melvin, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. So just, public hearing's been closed. Yeah, I can't, sorry, Judy, I can't take your comments because I closed the public hearing. So, yeah, it's up to council now to make the decision. So. All right. Looking at just my, opinion on the discussion, I agree with what Councilmember Newton has shared. And I think the decision on the dog shows a tremendous amount of compassion and leeway on the side of the city to let somebody keep that number of dogs on the property and then have the sunset clause. So kudos to looking at the situation and trying to find a compassionate and caring way to resolve that issue. And when we look at least as I look at the horse keeping, it's really a matter of math and what the code dictates. And so I'm fine with the 38. I know at least in some of the emails we got, the argument was that those 2 additional horses were going to kind of make or break the ranch. And I just don't know that I can wrap my head around that, as far as looking at a total business plan that, 2 horses are going to make or break a ranch. Certainly provide a cushion, but I just don't, I can't figure out a way where it's going to make or break somebody in the business they're running. So that's my 2 cents on the issue. And I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or anything. Catherine.
When I looked at it, we all are supportive of our equestrian-based businesses, right, and our ranches, and we want them to be successful and do well. I was looking for evidence, right, to justify that increased number. So I wanted to know what the rationale was for the number that was put out there, which we've talked about, right, is based on our codes and based on land use and based on square footage. And then if there was any other reason not to have those 2 extra horses, which there wasn't found by our animal control on any of the visits that they went to, that there were some issues with those 2 stalls, but they were rectified with some of the runoff and the manure. And so, you know, when we talk about 38 to 40, I feel like the precedent that was set, it seems a little like we just kind of halved the number and added that on, that it wasn't necessarily a number that was tied to health and welfare of the animal. So I haven't heard, for me, a strong case against the additional 2.
I guess the only comment that I have to on this is that I always like to have, and again, I just have one horse because I'm in Norco, got to have one, right? So, but I raise a lot of other livestock. I always like to have one pen open for quarantine or for special care if an animal's injured or something like that. And there are a few times a year where I am maxed out. But if I have the ability to have one open pen for necessity for quarantine or wound care or any of that kind of stuff, I'm always going to lean towards trying to have something available. So I think if, you know, they're maxed out on capacity, what do you do when the situation comes up where you've got to quarantine or you have to do something and you're just tapped out on facilities? So.
I'm going to bounce back to dogs just for a second. That, correct me if I'm wrong, the way it was mentioned, these 3 dogs are service dogs, or they're being trained or going to become service dogs?
They're looking into training them to become service dogs.
Okay,
They're
so
not right now. It was just something that they were talking about.
just so basically no action
Not
as
nothing-
service dogs other than looking into it.
Correct. It's nothing as I've seen for.
Okay. Thank you. Catherine, maybe this will help you a little bit. And Berwin, I know, because we've both been on the racetrack too, but Robin makes a really good point. To have that extra empty 1 or 2 stalls, you have to quarantine your horse, just if it's just snotty, right? I always called mine like a make-ready stall. Always keep one open just for any of those reasons. And you know that at the track that there's an advantage just to have that open stall. You made a real good point with that. So, I guess what I said earlier was our ordinance is pretty clear. I think it's very lenient. All of us, you know, support animal keeping and certainly the equestrian lifestyle. And that animal control's opinion has always meant a lot. And I know it meant a lot to me on the planning commission. And I think to take a number that, you know, by our ordinance and by our code, that would only allow 25, and then have enough trust in our animal control officer and animal control department to look at this and go, you know, this is kind of the unwritten policy, but this is what animal controls feels that's adequate, and we can look at going half again. I think that's a smart way to do it, and it also promotes animal keeping. So, you know, we've had it where we just like try to get 1 more horse or 2 more horses or whatever. I'll always rely on animal control's opinion up to a point. So, my feeling is I think the planning commission made the right decision, that their recommendation was to allow 38 horses, 7 dogs, the dogs we reduced by attrition, Berwin makes a good point. If they are service dogs, I could certainly see that consideration, but at this point in time, it's just something to thinking about. I think it should just go the way the planning commission had their recommendation. Thank you, Mayor. Sure.
I'll move.
I'll make them.
Oh, go ahead.
You want to take that as a motion to uphold the recommendation of the planning commission's decision?
Second.
Please vote. If you would revote, I cleared it by. Oh, no, it went. Never mind. It was, yeah, if you could revote, please. I cleared it. There it goes. Okay. There we go. With Councilmember Batch has abstained.
All right, thank you. So the planning commission decision has been upheld. Thank you for everybody that came to speak tonight. So we're going to move on to item 7B, which is a public hearing for the first reading. Alma, you are busy this evening.
I'm busy. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, this agenda item consists of 3 ordinances that are going to be basically discussed together. So the purpose of these ordinances are as a result of the Planning Commission and the City Council's review of the accessory building ordinance for detached accessory buildings such as garages, workshops, etc. So as the council may recall, we did have the discussion just in review of the ordinance, and there's certain changes that came about to basically address some of the concerns that staff has been experiencing throughout the year, the annual review of the accessory building ordinance. So with Zone Code Amendment 2023-04, what was presented to the City Council and the Planning Commission is a clarification on the large vehicle parking buildings. Currently, Chapter 1868, which is our accessory building ordinance, allows for 1,000 square foot building with an attached 400 square footage for other use. So based on the discussion recommendations, we need to clarify the purpose of or how the 400 square foot can be used. The Zone Code Amendment 2023-04 will amend Chapter 1868 so that the additional 400 square feet allowance is not just interpreted as a lean-to, but allows the homeowner to kind of use the additional square footage combined with 1,000 square feet, so that maybe if they want to do 800 square feet at the taller, but then they can do 600 square feet at the lower elevation, that would facilitate a creative design and more architectural compatibility with like the primary dwelling. So that's one aspect of Zone Code Amendment 2023-04. The other aspect of Zone Code Amendment 2023-04 is allowing storage containers. So currently, the building code is where storage containers are addressed, and they require a conditional use permit for those that are over 120 square feet. So with this zoning code amendment, the proposal is to amend Chapter 1868, which is our accessory building ordinance, to make provision for storage containers, 240 square feet or less, but more than 120 square feet, that only require building permit, no CUP, and that these storage containers be subject to design criteria that is established in the already in Chapter 1868, which I pointed out in your staff report with respect to making it compatible with the existing dwelling. And that the other criteria is that these 240 square foot or less containers that only be allowed one per every 20,000 square feet of lot area. So that's staff's recommendation, and that was presented to the council. Council agreed, and here we are. So to make our code consistent, code amendment, not zone code amendment, code amendment because it's entitled Chapter 15. We're recommending that that section be amended to reference Chapter 1868 to where storage containers that are 240 square feet or less are subject to the requirements of Chapter 1868. So that's just for consistency. So further, as part of Zone Code Amendment 2023-04, one of the things that the commission and the council discussed is the requirements for accessory buildings 120 square feet or less that don't require a building permit. Now, they don't require a building permit, but that does not automatically exempt them from zoning regulations. So what staff's recommendation is that the 1868 address buildings that are 120 square feet or less that yet they don't require a building permit, but there be some criteria like for example a minimum setback. That way they don't end up just right up at the property line, which sometimes causes issues with the neighbor. So staff's recommendation is that buildings 120 square feet or less, although they don't require a building permit, that they be at least 5 feet away from property line, 5 feet between structures, and that was something that commission wanted to make sure that we included. And that there be a limit to the height, building height, max wall height of 8 feet, and a maximum overall height of 14 feet to the peak. So that's part of Zone Code Amendment 2023-04. So now going into Zone Code Amendment 2023-05, this is not necessarily, this was an item that came up in discussion of these accessory building ordinances. This item came up not necessarily tied to accessory buildings, but tied to buildings, for example, ADUs that are being set as close as 4 feet from the property line and in reference to the overhang. So when you put an ADU as close as 5 feet to the, 4 feet to the property line, you have an overhang that's it's probably looking at about 2 feet from the property line, and that has a potential to cause drainage issues. So staff is recommending that just a kind of a general amendment to chapter 18.31 that talks about setbacks in general, to state that in no case shall a roof ADU be closer than 3 feet from property line in a required yard. So if an ADU is placed as close as 4 feet, the maximum overhang can only be 1 foot. So you basically get the same thing as, existing houses, for example, can be as close as 5 feet. With a 2 foot overhang, you have 3 feet away from property line. So you're achieving the same thing with this provision. So with that, staff is recommending approval of ordinance 1102, approving Zone Code Amendment 2023-04, ordinance 1003, approving Zone Code Amendment 2023-05, and approval of ordinance 1004, approving Zone Code Amendment 2023-04. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
All right, we'll start over here. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any questions? Councilmember Alleman?
Yes, just on the storage containers.
Yes.
So looking at slide 2, the storage containers are subject to design criteria, which you said is in chapter 18.68 of the municipal code. So I'm looking at 18.68.20, size, layout, and design of accessory buildings. Is that where?
Yes.
Okay. So my questions are, within this, because I know we talked about this kind of when we workshopped it, having some requirements to either screen them or just kind of have them fit in general. It says that the exterior wall finishes should include materials, style, and colors of the primary dwelling, or materials and features. So for instance, if I have a storage container that's under 240 square feet, I can just get a building permit. If I just paint it the same color as my house, does that meet the design criteria then?
Yes, potentially, yes. And they can, yes, to match the existing house. That's one way of making it compatible. And they can go as far as adding false windows to make it more compatible with the building. But that's essentially what you're looking at, is some fake plantons and paint.
Okay. And then my second question would be, is there anything in the design criteria that addresses the upkeep of the paint or like removal of rust? Because after time,
Yes.
the shipping containers don't hold up as well or may not as some of the buildings.
It is not in here, but that's definitely something that can be added to require homeowners to maintain it and keep it up. So yeah, that's something that we can add to this criteria.
That's something I'd like to see, just as a resident with experience of shipping containers in my personal neighborhood. It would be nice if they weren't rusting everywhere. So thank you.
Councilmember Newton, any questions?
Just want to make sure I have this right this time, so that, like on the storage buildings, the 10 by 10s
Yes,
or 10 by 12s, don't need a permit,
correct.
but there'll be a 5-foot separation between each.
Yes,
Now, you just can't stack them all together.
that is correct. That's the intent. However, there is no design criteria for those, but there is a building separation and setbacks for those.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. And I appreciate your help. I know, just getting that changed with the overhang,
Mhm.
you know, is instead of putting all the water on your neighbor's property. So I think you did fine with how we have to deal with the ADUs
Yeah.
and all of that. So, that's the only question. I'm going to come back to Catherine, though, on the paint under discussion. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Hannah.
Okay, I'm on the first one up there with the additional 400 square feet built on the side like a shed. There's a lot of them. And I had one down at my place in Texas. You'd use the inside part for parking your equipment and trucks and stuff like that. And then on that outside part, we built where we kept our animals
Mhm.
over there. And there's one like that over in the bluffs on the county side of bluff, where there used to be one like that where the guy kept all his stuff in the barn and used the shed out there for his horses.
Yeah.
And then we talked this morning about the storage containers and dressed them up where they look nice and get the LA graffiti off of them. Though, do you have any idea about how many illegal ones there are in town?
Oh my goodness. I can't even begin to tell you.
I know
There's a lot. There's a lot.
well, 2 or 3 years ago, Kathy started getting on them pretty good, and they was
Yeah.
having to move some of them out, and I didn't know how many they got rid of, or how many they finally okayed to.
And yeah, no, there's a lot. And I think it's a lot. And I think this is actually going to be a benefit. Well, it's going to make it easier for property owners to come forward and legalize them, I think. And because they are, they do make a good feed, tack and feed.
So they won't have to move in on Sunday anymore when nobody's working. Thank you.
Thank you, Burr.
I just had one question, Alma, before we go to the public hearing. When we talk about the smaller, 120 square
Mhm.
foot and the 5-foot setbacks and the 5 feet apart, is that just going to be a code enforcement asking for compliance
Well,
moving forward?
and moving forward, I mean, it's going to be based on complaints because there are a lot of tough sheds out there that are probably pushed right up to so it'll be based on complaints. I mean, but now at least it's codified to where we could actually cite the sections of the code where they would have to comply.
Okay. And so should this pass, is it retroactive, or like if something's already in place, are people going to be asked to move those items, or does it depend on if their neighbor complains?
It's based on a complaint. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions of staff?
Well, I'll leave this for discussion.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have any cards?
We have no speaker cards for this item, Mayor.
I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion and action. So Councilmember Element?
And I was just going to ask if it would behoove us to communicate any changes to the public that we make. So if you're going to go out and get a new tough shed, or you're going to go out and get a container, that you realize it needs to be 5 feet off the property line and they need to be separate, just so we're communicating to people. I just think that would be very helpful, because I don't think most people who go and buy a shed, right, are looking up the municipal code to see where it can go. So just letting people know. And people who are putting in shipping containers before illegally, you know, just to let them know, hey, you can do it in this manner to be courteous of your neighbors.
Any other comments or discussion on these items?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Catherine about the paint comment. I'm with you on maintaining it, along with your house. And I guess this goes, you know, way back. I guess, how would we be handling that? I mean, I guess I could let all the paint on my house peel, but I have to keep my container up. You know where I'm going? And
No, I do, but I guess because this isn't, there's a different set of rights that come with these. For me as a resident, when we talked about approving them, I felt like one of the things that I heard was we would have some design standards so that they aren't eyesores. So for me to approve it, that anyone can just go get one pretty easily, I don't want it to be an eyesore for their neighbors. They're large, big
right.
buildings. So however we can.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm not quite this way, but it's, you know, the old argument used to be about, well, we're not going to turn Norco into an HOA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my contention was that, you know, at least get the toilet off your roof, all right? That's holding the tarp down. And we had it on 4th Street like that. But yeah, but it's just kind of that.
Yeah,
You know, if the container's in your front yard, yeah, it should have decoration and things like that, and it should be maintained, but I just
but
wonder
it's
if
only
it's just
5
opening
feet
up.
off your property line and you stare at it every day. If it's covered in rust.
I just wonder if that's gonna open up another door. I mean, I'm with you on maintaining
Recommendations
your
on that,
property,
Alma?
believe me, okay?
Madam Mayor, we do have a public nuisance provision that declares as a public nuisance the maintenance of any structure in a state of deterioration, peeling paint, broken windows, roof and disrepair, that sort of thing. So we have a general nuisance provision for that. We take a very reasonable approach to it. So, you know, we're not going out and trying to chip paint with our fingernail, but if the house is seriously deteriorated, then we will issue an administrative.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about, you know, a quarter size thing of rust. I'm talking about, you know, like an eyesore for your neighbor, right? Just to be a good neighbor and not keep your property up. So, yeah. And if we're essentially allowing a new thing, you know, so I want to do that thinking of our residents.
I'll give you credit for this. You hit the nail on the head. If we were all good neighbors, we wouldn't need any of these ordinances. Okay.
I have a question for Colin. Do each one of these need to be taken separately, or can they be taken as a package?
They can be taken as a package. We just need to make sure that we read the title.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Ordinance number 1102, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, approving Zone Code Amendment 2023-04, a city-initiated proposal to amend Norco Municipal Code Title 18 Zoning, Chapter 1868, accessory building use permits to amend the provisions regulations for large vehicle parking buildings and for buildings 240 square feet and under. Next one is ordinance 1103, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, approving Zone Code Amendment 2023-05, a city-initiated proposal to amend Norco Municipal Code Title 18 Zoning, Chapter 1831, general provisions, yards, setbacks, and height exceptions to amend the provisions regulations for roof overhangs, eaves, in the required setback areas. final is ordinance 1104, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, approving Code Amendment 2023-04, a city-initiated proposal to amend Norco Municipal Code Title 15, Building and Construction, Chapter 1502, Building Code, Section 1502150, conversion of cargo containers to allow cargo carriers, metal storage containers, 240 square feet and under without approval of a conditional use permit on property zoned for residential, subject to the requirements of Chapter 1868, Chapter 1868 accessory building use permits of the Norco Municipal Code.
Please vote. Councilmember Hannah, I saw you put your iPad away. Would you like to vote? Motion passes unanimous. Thank you.
I think Member Hannah might have forgot we still have closed session to go back to. All right, item number 8, city council and staff communications. Any city staff? Anybody? All right, city attorney, city manager. Berwin. Greg.
Just a couple.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I'll take Berwin's time. Remind everybody this Saturday, senior breakfast. Bob's going to buy everybody breakfast. Amanda, I wanted to compliment you and facilities. I know you were fooling around a lot with the barn and all of that here in the last couple of weeks. But on behalf of Berwin and I and our animal rescue team, you were able to slip in and build the shelter at Station 47 for the NART trailers. So just appreciate that. And maybe something to think about. Catherine got me thinking about this on the paint deal. In our specific plans, like Norco Ridge Ranch, we have fence and wall plans. And here lately, it's like I've gotten a couple of complaints about a certain fence on Valley View. But also with that, in our ordinance, like, you know, with containers, and we're talking about storage buildings, you can build your fence out of used overhead doors. Maybe someday in the future, we could maybe look at maybe encompassing a larger fence ordinance to, like we have with our fence and wall plants, you know, permissible uses. So maybe so we don't end up with pink vinyl and overhead doors as our fencing options. Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm done.
Councilmember Alleman.
Sorry, we're talking about the pink fence. I just wanted to thank all of the volunteers and our city staff who just worked so hard on our community events, and people came from all over. I was with them sitting in traffic on 6th Street trying to get to the fair. So, but it was great when we were there. So just really want to, you know, thank everyone who just worked really hard. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Batch.
Yeah, I'm gonna ditto that. My mother has been going to the Norco Fair since 1961, and she said this was the best fair that she's ever been to. She said it was absolutely wonderful, and she said she couldn't believe how big it was, and the weather was perfect. And she said just too many people, you should have cut it off.
Well, and I'd like to finish with Amanda and everybody's. I mean, really, that is a huge feat. And I can tell you every single person that walked in that facility, their jaw dropped. Every single one. And the kids were excited. I'm still getting emails from parents and kids and everybody. So job well done to you and your staff. And, you know, those old rickety pole barns lasted for 50 years. So here's to hoping this one lasts for 100 years for everybody. So thank you so much. So that's, oh, yes, it has. Yes, it has. So that's good. So we're going to adjourn to closed session. So thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Madam Mayor, adjourning to closed session on conference with real property negotiators on the Newcastle
So they
matter.
don't have to, there's a big bag in there